Episode 286. Appearance is Power. At Zeke's apartment, the manager came in with a variety show contract.
Zeke, Tucker's contract is ready. Are you signing for him?
Are you sure you want to take Tucker to a variety show?
Jack was a little surprised. Yesterday morning, the manager had been against this, but now he had prepared the contract.
Yeah, he'll join the team at the end of next month.
Zeke walked over, glanced at the contract, and then signed on the last page with a black pen.
How long will it take?
Jack suddenly thought of something.
He still has to attend school.
I've already asked him.
Zeke wasn't concerned. Jack nodded. Zeke had arranged everything, so he didn't need to worry much. He mainly had come to talk about Anne today. Standing up with the document, he continued.
James said that he has 2 daughters, but I can't find information about the other one. I heard from him that she never lived with him and always lived with her grandma. I wonder how she turned out.
After all, when they first found James, he had been in a terrible situation, moving bricks on a construction site. Anne's information had comforted Jack a little, as it was much better than he had first expected. As for James's other daughter, Jack didn't know what she was like, and how she was compared to Anne.
That's right.
Zeke snapped his fingers and lifted his chin to the manager.
Bring the files from my study.
Knowing what information he was talking about, the manager quickly handed the printed information on Anne to Jack. Only when Jack left did he turn to look at Zeke. Zeke rubbed his eyebrows.
What is it? Does your niece have any intention of entering the entertainment industry?
The manager walked over to him.
Look at her face. She was born to be in this industry. It just so happens that your studio wants to sign a newbie. What's better than putting your niece under your nose?
The manager was naturally talking about Bessy.
With your status in the entertainment industry and your large number of resources, she won't be dragged to messy banquets and will have you covering for her. From then on, the 2 of you will sweep the domestic entertainment circle.
Imagining this scene as he spoke, he flushed with excitement and reached out to pat the table. Zeke tapped his fingers on the sofa and glanced at him.
It depends on the situation. You can do what you like if you can convince her to enter the entertainment industry.
He just felt like Bessy didn't seem the type to want to enter the entertainment industry. With her looks, she couldn't have not been approached by scouts before. In fact, he thought of the car he saw that night. The manager stood up, his face filled with joy.
Then give me her contact information.
Instead of giving it to him, Zeke lightly said,
Go to Tucker for it.
Taking out his phone, he clicked on Bessy's saved contact and stared at it for a long time before opening Twitter and flipping through the Add Friends page. Quickly, he found her contact number and clicked on it. The avatar was blank and nothing was written on her profile. He neatly filled 2 words in the verification message. Zeke Miller. Jack had already returned to the Miller family's old house. He was looking at the information in his room now. Outside, Keith knocked on the door. Putting down his reading glasses, Jack said in a deep voice,
Come in.
Jack. Keith walked over, and when he saw the documents on the desk, his eyes shook slightly, and his voice almost broke.
129's information? How did you obtain it?
On the information page that Zeke had printed, the lower right corner held 129's emblem. After being in the Miller family's house for so long, of course, Keith knew Evanston's forces. The previous year, the Miller family hadn't been so severely split, and there had been more than a dozen programmers in the family. But in the last year, the 4th son had managed to break the Miller family one by one in that short time. It was mostly because Sherry was a member of 129 and found a lot of internal information about the Miller family. The 4th son was such an unscrupulous person. It only made sense that the Miller family declined under his hands. The 4 major families all wanted to annex the emerging power, 129. But forget anyone else. Lone Wolf and Giant Crocodile alone would deter all the forces from stepping beyond the prescribed limit.
Zeke gave me this information on Anne.
Jack put down the documents. Noticing his strange expression, Keith glanced up involuntarily.
What's wrong?
Jack sneered.
She's fastidious, but incompetent. She almost unilaterally broke off the father-daughter relationship with James. Since she wants to be rid of us, just leave her alone.
Nodding, Keith glanced at the documents at the side and remembered why he was looking for Jack.
I've looked through the surveillance of James's apartment.
What did you find?
Jack stood up with his hands on the table.
You'll know when you see it.
Keith didn't know what to say, and his expression was a little weird. Putting aside the matter at hand, Jack followed Keith to Ricky's room to take a look. The video was being processed there. When Ricky saw Jack, he directly opened the 2-minute surveillance video without a word. Jack finished looking at it and noticed some people coming and going.
Which one?
He asked Ricky. After a moment of silence, Ricky lowered his head and pointed his finger to the time on the monitor.
Look again.
The time was displayed above the surveillance video. Taking a closer look, Jack saw the problem. On Thanksgiving Day, 2 minutes of each surveillance, from 11 a.m. and 8 p.m., had been skipped.
When I first got it, the total video duration was 36 hours, but just now, there was a sudden loss of 4 minutes.
Ricky glanced at the computer with an unpredictable expression.
Jack, someone has hacked me under my nose. I've yet to find the deleted video.
Although Ricky wasn't a professional hacker, he was still a senior programmer of the Miller Corporation. His hacking level wasn't comparable to that of masters, but he was still much better than ordinary people. He had built up firewalls on his computer by himself. Someone had tampered with the data on his firewall and taken the opportunity to delete the video. Who could do this?
Jack, the other party is probably a very powerful hacker.
Ricky looked up expectantly.
If he could help us.
Sitting across from him, Jack asked.
But how could James know such a person?
Jack couldn't understand it. It wasn't that he looked down on James, but given his living environment, he didn't look like someone who would know such people. Realizing the countless riddles waiting to be answered, his head started aching. The next day, on Northwestern University's campus, Anne came out of class holding a pile of books and saw Kenneth standing there. She was stunned. Ever since the final exams, she had not seen Kenneth, nor had he looked for her. Thus, the two had almost lost contact. She hadn't heard from him after coming to Northwestern University, which was when she realized he wasn't schooling here. Standing there holding the books, she thought for a while before walking to him. "Kenny, why are you here?" If it had been a month ago, she wouldn't have been so passionate about him. But now, she pursed her lips slightly. Putting his hands in his pockets, Kenneth glanced at the crowd and paused when he heard her. He nodded slightly at her and replied,
I'm waiting for Paul.
"By the way, which school did you apply to?" Anne nodded.
I didn't apply to college.
Having seen Paul, Kenneth waved at him and spoke calmly in a clear tone.
My grandpa didn't let me continue studying.
"You're not going to college?" Anne looked a little stunned. She raised her head and glanced at him before smiling reluctantly. "Kenny, are you lying to me?" What was he doing if he wasn't attending college?
I'm really not studying anymore.
With Paul a few steps away, Kenneth glanced at Anne and said,
We're going to eat. Do you want to come?
She shook her head, a little afraid of Paul, especially after Bessy's incident. No, Kenneth didn't say much. He had always been cold, and after so many months of not seeing him, she thought he seemed to have changed a lot. After he left, Anne's classmate of the same major came over and asked her who the boy was just now. "He's so handsome. He's comparable to our school heartthrob, Luke. He's not from our school, is he?" "He's not." Anne smiled. After the incident, she had asked the counselor to change her dormitory. He scored 732 in the final exams and ranked second in the nation. There were sounds of exclamation all around, but she glanced at Kenneth's back and pursed her lips. She didn't know if Paul would tell him what happened on the internet. In Bessy's bedroom, Kara noticed that her potted flower was different today, but Bessy was wearing headphones and writing some music that she didn't understand. After finishing the homework set by the professor, Kara turned on the computer and asked if anyone in the class wanted to play games together. Not long after that, Denora, who was rarely around these days, came back. She put the bag on her desk and glanced at Kara and Alyssa. "Do you know that your department is having a lecture tomorrow?" Letting go of the keyboard, Kara's eyes lit up. Are you talking about our school heartthrob Luke? Of course, she sighed, but I couldn't get a ticket. Northwestern University's lecture hall was only so big and couldn't fit everyone in the science and technology department. It wouldn't have been a problem if it was someone else, but it just had to be Luke, who moved in and out with wizardly elusiveness. It was not just the science and technology department's students, but students from the other departments as well, who were frantically rushing for tickets. Although the lecture was originally intended for the science and technology department's new students, that group of students couldn't grab their share in the end. In fact, out of all the students of different years and majors, the science and technology department students fared the worst in the end. Their tickets were few and far between. Kara now recognized the terror of fanaticism. Episode 287. Bessy continues to meet her friends. My seniors happen to know Luke. Denora smiled. You know Luke? Kara kicked her legs excitedly. Have you seen him in person? Sitting down on her chair, Denora glanced at Bessy after handing the tickets to Kara. She was still wearing headphones, as if she hadn't heard them. I've met him once. I'll bring you guys along the next time I have a chance. Bessy's phone was playing songs, and the headphones were specially made so that she couldn't hear background noise. A phone call came in at this time. Glancing at it, she hung up instead of picking up, and then got up. Kara glanced at her. Wait, Bessy, are you going to eat? Let's go together. She followed her with her meal card. Bessy glanced at her and then held up her phone. I am, but I'm meeting a few friends. Who? Following Bessy downstairs, Kara slowed down when she heard Bessy was going to see her friends. Although she was close to Bessy, she still felt embarrassed since she didn't know these friends. Or I could eat by myself, she started to say. Bessy raised an eyebrow. They're schoolmates. Let's go, they're in the cafeteria. How many? Kara followed her. 3. Stopping at the vending machine on the first floor of Canteen 8, Bessy threw a few coins in and then took out 2 cans of Coke. All 3 of Bessy's friends had passed the Northwestern University examination. Kara didn't know what to expect from Bessy's friends. Could this be a legendary gathering of birds of a feather? Bessy threw a can of Coke to Kara, holding her phone and the other Coke in one hand. Without putting her phone back into her pocket, she opened the tab and took a sip. Holding the can of Coke, Kara followed her to the 3rd floor. Students went to Canteen 8's 1st and 2nd floors to collect their meals, while the 3rd floor was for ordering a la carte, which was much more expensive per person. At 5 o'clock, before the normal afternoon peak hours, not many people were on the 3rd floor. There were only a few people at the tables. Kara looked around. Where are your friends? Casually shaking the can of Coke, Bessy lifted her chin towards the table next to the farthest window. There. Although short-sighted, Kara could still see the 2 figures sitting there clearly. She and Bessy arrived at the table within 2 minutes.
Bessy, you came right on the dot again.
Holding a cigarette, Brian didn't dare to light it. He crossed his arms and leaned back in his chair. He didn't have the air of stability that Mr. Grint exuded, and the expression on his handsome face was unruly and reckless. Sitting across from him, Scarlett was the complete opposite.
Hello.
He held out his hand when he saw Kara behind Bessy.
I'm Brian from the other school.
Bessy sat down on the iron chair. My roommate, Kara. The 3 introduced themselves, one after the other. Returning to her senses, Kara sat down beside Bessy and let out a sigh of relief. They were indeed Bessy's friends, and all of them were very good-looking. Anyone who could talk to Bessy, who had such a bad temper, could certainly get along with Brian and the others. Scarlett was rather quiet, so it was mostly Brian talking to Kara. Bessy leaned back and drank the Coke. Bessy said that there's 3 of you. Kara scanned the room, remembering what Bessy said just now.
Luke went to order the dishes. He's more familiar with Northwestern University than us.
Brian put down his fork and gestured behind Kara.
He's coming.
Kara instinctively turned around. Brian was very popular at the University of Chicago, but he wasn't from their school, after all. Kara was also a new student and didn't know much. Scarlett was always alternating between the library, dormitory, or classroom. In Northwestern University's vast world, she wasn't as expectation-defying as she had been in Bright Bow High School and was only slightly famous in her department. But Luke was different. His popularity could be understood from how quickly the tickets for today were snatched up. As the first person in Northwestern University to be able to enter the laboratory at the beginning of their sophomore semester, the school forum was boasting of his glorious events even today. After so many days in the university, Kara finally knew how important the laboratory was. If a student from Northwestern University wanted to enter the laboratory, it was about the same difficulty as a student from an ordinary high school wanting to enter Northwestern University. Other than the midterm and final exams, standards had to be met for other assessments as well. Kara had been amazed by the leaked assessment questions in the school forum. As expected, the laboratory wasn't a place that ordinary people could enter. And Luke? He was a godlike person, not just to Kara, but to the entire Northwestern University student body. His indisputable figure was more popular than the top 100 popular girls. News of Luke entering the laboratory had blown up among the seniors this year, and he had become famous in one foul swoop. In the first semester of his freshman year, he had lived in seclusion, so not many people knew him. Therefore, when Kara saw Luke coming over with a tray, she sat very still on her stool and thought she was daydreaming.
"I'm Luke, a sophomore in the physics department,"
said Luke calmly, sitting down next to Brian and taking out the fork from inside the bowl. He handed the tray to Brian and asked him to pick up the remaining dishes. Kara responded stiffly to his greeting, then held her fork stiffly, and just as stiffly pulled the tab of the Coke bottle. To her side, Bessy replied on behalf of Kara. "She might be your fan. She just got 2 tickets and is over the moon." Luke chuckled.
"The tickets outside are basically backstage tickets."
Brian served the dishes one by one.
"I came to talk to you about the midterm exam,"
Luke said, looking up at Bessy soberly. Bessy wasn't very bothered. "Why?"
"Don't do it."
Luke calmly picked up his fork while glancing at her.
"I mean the Morse code. The same goes for the final exam."
After a pause, he said again,
"Maybe we can't wait until the final exam."
"I wouldn't do it even without your advice. I promised Dean Soup to take the exam properly." Reaching out to flick the strand of hair that had slid over her eyes, Bessy calmly replied, "But is the midterm exam that important?" Bessy still didn't understand the laboratory's rules. She had focused only on her nuclear engineering textbooks.
"Yes, the selection of candidates for the Science and Technology Department's participation in the laboratory is based on performance. The laboratory has serious divisions now. Before the next resource allocation, President Flores will probably put you there. He probably already signed you up for this year's assessment."
Luke solemnly glanced at the vivid sunlight outside the window. He could guess President Flores's intentions without thinking. Bessy put her chin in her hand. "What do you mean?"
"There are 3 major laboratories. The medical laboratory is at Northwestern University. The Science and Technology Laboratory is at the junction between Northwestern University, and the IT laboratory is at the University of Chicago."
He looked at her again.
"The laboratory consists of not just students from Northwestern University, but also from the University of Chicago. Of course, the powers of Devil City have basically been assimilated by Northwestern University and the University of Chicago, both of which are competing for the number of placements in the research institutes. If President Flores signed you up, the first round of screening will be your midterm exam."
Nodding, Bessy turned the fork in her hand. "I see." Luke just casually mentioned this, unaware that Bessy valued what he deemed as important so much that she paid more attention to the midterm exam now than she previously had to the final exam. Having not seen each other for a long time, they continued chatting for a while after finishing their meals. It wasn't until 5:30 p.m. when more students got off of class that the crowd gradually increased and they left. On the way back to the bedroom, Kara was silent. She seemed deep in thought. "What's wrong with you?" Alyssa asked when they entered. Staring at the 2 tickets for Luke's speech on the table, Kara looked up. "Oh, I'm okay. I'm just thinking about something." Luke returned to the laboratory. A middle-aged man in a lab coat came in hurriedly.
"How did it go? Has she agreed to be my apprentice?
Slowly putting on a lab coat, Luke buttoned it up and answered expressionlessly.
I asked. She's not willing.
The middle-aged man wiped his bald head with an incomprehensible expression.
That can't be. How could she not agree to be my apprentice? Impossible.
Walking past with his hands full of experimental equipment, Jerome glanced at the professor sleepily and sympathetically. Jerome had dark circles under his eyes. Didn't he know that Luke's friend couldn't be mentioned? Jerome had just spoken casually about her once, and he hadn't closed his eyes for 3 days. Luke finished putting on his coat and suddenly remembered something.
Jerome, do you still have tickets to the talk?
Jerome was jolted awake.
Of course, I have the VIP Supreme tickets. Luke, what are your instructions? Get some tickets for my friend Bessy.
Jerome's eyes lit up.
Okay, I'll send them over to Bessy.
In the second basement of the laboratory, the person in charge was checking the list of applicants for this year. 2 examinations were held in the Science and Technology Laboratory every year, at the end of March and early December, respectively. Each exam must be registered for in advance. The registration for the early December exam ended today, and the person in charge had just received the list submitted by Northwestern University's President Flores.
A new student.
He felt stunned at the sight of Bessy's name. Hearing this, the assistant beside him turned and leaned over.
Could they have made a mistake? I'll ask the professor at Northwestern University.
3 minutes later, she returned with the phone. The person in charge pushed his glasses and asked,
So? President Flores personally confirmed that this list is correct.
The assistant responded, and then put the phone back in his pocket. Episode 288. The Opening of a Good Show. Instead of worrying further about this, the person in charge just typed Bessy's name into the list and pondered out loud.
President Flores is very confident this year. It'll probably be another good show.
Northwestern University had done a similar thing before and reported a freshman named Luke, who had shown off his brilliance in the laboratory. At that time, the laboratory had made several calls before confirming that Northwestern University's president hadn't given the wrong name. But Luke's name had at least been reported at the end of March. It was only December, and the overall class time new students had received was less than half of what Luke had been given when he took the exam. What was Northwestern University doing? When Alyssa came out of the bathroom at the Northwestern University girls' dormitory, Bessy's table was already empty.
She went to the library again?
Alyssa asked with a lower voice. Wasn't she too hard-working? Other than during bedtime, Alyssa hardly saw Bessy all day. Lifting her head from the textbook, Kara slightly frowned. Yeah, her midterm exam is the computer science exam. A double-degree program is difficult. Northwestern University's subjects were difficult, and it already wasn't easy to complete a major. Thus, double-degree majors naturally had to work harder than ordinary people. Opposite, Denora had finished packing her books and was putting on earrings while looking in the mirror. Hearing this, she turned her head and said, "She still hasn't given up on the double degree?" No. Kara checked her watch. There was an open class tonight, so she put away her book. Suddenly remembering something, she turned to look at Denora. "Denora, do you have tickets? My class representative wants them." "Your class representative?" Denora finished with her earrings and started putting on her lipstick. "Gary." Kara propped her hand on the back of the chair. Denora paused while applying her lipstick. Geniuses from all over the country were gathered at Northwestern University. It wasn't easy for new students to make a name for themselves unless they were very good-looking like Bessy, who had godly visuals and had shot to fame during military training. As for the other new students, not many were outstanding. But Denora knew of Gary. He was Evanston's top scorer for the final exams, with a score of 728. He had even been on the news for several days after the release of the results. Having perfected her lipstick, Denora took her book and glanced at Kara. "I don't have class tonight. Coincidentally, I'll go to the open class with you guys." In Northwestern University's Student Union office, the president was in a meeting with the ministers and vice ministers of various departments. 2 knocks sounded on the door. Jerome opened the door and entered in a hurry. He had yet to change out of his lab coat that night. The president of the student union quickly got up. "President Jerome, why are you here?" Jerome was the student union's previous president. Glancing around, he asked,
"Do you still have my tickets here?"
The reason why the student union had tickets to Luke's talk was solely because of Jerome.
Yes.
The president hurriedly stopped the meeting and stood up to take Jerome to the office. He opened the drawer and pulled out the tickets.
There are 4 tickets left.
Jerome glanced at them and saw that they were second-row tickets.
That's fine.
He reached out for them. Holding the tickets, he didn't converse further with the president and just flipped through the information on his phone with his head lowered. Bessy's dormitory address was written on his phone. It was almost 9 p.m. and the street lights on the campus had gradually turned on. Jerome pressed on his bicycle's handbrakes and called Bessy to ask where she was. She was still in the library. Many people were inside, and the library assistant would normally clear your space if the seat was empty for more than 20 minutes. So Bessy didn't go down to meet him. Putting down her pen, she took her phone to the outdoor balcony and called Kara. "Where are you?" she asked while casually leaning against the wall. Kara gave her an address. Recalling the map of Northwestern University in her mind, Bessy realized she was very close and touched her chin thoughtfully. "Wait there a few minutes. I'm going to ask my classmate to pass you something." On the other end of the phone, Kara and the others had just left the teaching building. The people from Kai's dormitory were enthusiastically chatting with Denora.
"You're from the software engineering department, but you can still get 2 tickets. Our department's seniors didn't even save any for the new students."
"I just happen to know a senior who knows the previous president." Smiling lightly, Denora glanced at Gary, who was walking behind them with his hands in his pocket.
"Kara doesn't even talk about Bessy. Denora, do you know what she does all day?"
The boys in Kai's dormitory were obviously more interested in Bessy. Denora's smile remained unchanged. She probably went to see her boyfriend. I think her boyfriend has already graduated a long time ago, and is a member of high society, so he doesn't appear on campus often.
"Boyfriend?"
Kai's roommate immediately beat his chest in dismay. After a long while, he recovered and sighed.
"Sure enough, beautiful women are always taken."
Denora maintained her smile without saying anything. While walking in front, Kara hung up the phone and said very apologetically, "I'm sorry, I have to wait for Bessy's classmate. You guys can head back first."
"It doesn't matter, it won't take long,"
Kai said, and the others immediately said that they could wait together. He glanced at Gary, who also nodded, so they stood there waiting for Bessy's classmate. Within a few minutes, Jerome saw Kara. At a glance, he recognized the girl with a fair-skinned baby face who was wearing a white t-shirt and blue denim hot pants. He squeezed his bicycle's handbrake and placed his feet on the ground.
"You're Bessy Miller's roommate?"
"Yes, hello." Kara politely greeted him. As a member of the student union, Denora had seen the photos at the student union's office and recognized him as their last president, Jerome Childs. Glancing at her, Jerome didn't recognize her and just nodded very perfunctorily.
"Hello, this is what Luke wants to pass to Bessy."
He took out a few tickets from his pocket and handed them to Kara.
"I have matters to attend to, so I'll head back now."
Those who could enter Northwestern University weren't ordinary people. Although Jerome was very ordinary compared to Luke's resume, he was still considered extremely good compared to other people. As the student union president and a member of the laboratory, he had the right to be proud. Other than Kara, whom Bessy told him about, he didn't bother greeting the others. After exchanging phone numbers with Kara, he left on his bicycle. He rushed back to sleep. From his clothes, it was very obvious that he was from the laboratory. His life was the dream of countless people in Northwestern University's school forum. After hearing Jerome mention Luke, Kara was rather calm when receiving the tickets. Glancing at Bessy's Twitter message, she turned to Gary. "Bessy has 4 tickets, but she's not going. I'll give them to you guys." The boys in the class had taken good care of the only 2 girls in their class ever since the military training and were very close to them, so Kara wasn't overly formal with them. Staring at Jerome's back, Kai confirmed his suspicions with her.
"Kara, was that the senior from the laboratory just now?"
"Yeah," Kara calmly replied. Denora also stared after Jerome, and her feelings were extremely complicated. First, it had been the World Poker Tour's computer. She originally thought that Bessy's boyfriend who had stepped into society had helped her. But what about Jerome now? She pursed her lips involuntarily. Bessy's methods were really not to be underestimated. Instead of going to Luke's speech, Bessy spent her time either in the library or in the nuclear engineering classroom. Apart from bedtime, even Kara rarely saw her. It was Saturday. There weren't any open classes or electives, and the library was closed. Both Alyssa and Kara were in the bedroom. Kara saw that Bessy was very busy, but she still wanted to pull her to play games every day. Other than her, Bessy's high school class also felt the same way. Looking up from the music score she was working on, Bessy said with a throbbing head, "Wait, I'll put you into the game group." Kara regretfully nodded. She had a lot of groups, so adding another one didn't matter. "Okay, put me in." Bessy found the group built by Paul and her high school classmates, then put Kara into it. She chatted privately with Paul and asked him to verify her. On the other end of the message, Paul received Bessy's news. Hearing that Kara was Bessy's roommate and had even been introduced to this group, he immediately went to verify her. After he tagged Kara and the people in the group all saw that she had been invited by Bessy, they basically lined up to welcome her and even made an appointment to play games together. The group was very joyful, so Kara also added them casually. Slightly unaccustomed to the enthusiasm, she said a few words, then opened the group information to take a look. The group's name was "Today's Another Day to Pay Homage to Bessy." Giggling, she closed the group chat. After Bessy put Kara into the group, she took a picture of her written music score, clicked on Noah's profile, and directly sent it to him. Then, she started packing her books.
"Are you going to the library today?"
Alyssa climbed off her bed. Bessy picked up her backpack.
"No, I'm going back home."
While pulling the zipper closed, she returned a message to Michael, then left the bedroom after bidding farewell to Kara and Alyssa. Denora didn't speak. Previously, she basically socialized with people from the student union. But these 2 days, she realized Kara was close to Gary, so she had subconsciously stayed behind in the dormitory. Unfortunately, Kara, Gary, Kai, and the others weren't easy to approach. And she had achieved no progress even after several days. After Bessy left, she turned on her phone, clicked on Sherry's Twitter profile, and sent her a message. "Cousin, can you lend me your poker tournament account?" Episode 289. Inviting Kara to join Bessy's high school game group. Carrying a black backpack, Bessy went to Dean Soup's office for a new set of books before going out. Downstairs, she bumped into Kai and Gary, both holding documents.
"Bessy!"
Kai immediately waved at her.
"Where are you going? Are you going to the snack street too?"
Gary also waved to her. "No, I'm going out." She held her books with the other hand and lowered her eyelashes, covering the fact that her eyes were bloodshot. She carried 7 nuclear engineering textbooks in total, each of them rather heavy. The weight of the 7 books amounted to a total of several kilograms.
"I'll carry them for you,"
Kai said very gentlemanly. If the other boys in the class saw him letting one of the only 2 girls in their class carry a stack of books by herself without his help, he would certainly be scolded by them. Weighing the books in her hand, Bessy replied, "Thanks, but they're not heavy." In the past few days, lots of rumors about her had spread on the forum, but the boys from her class didn't believe them. After military training, they understood her temper and knew she never had much contact with boys usually. Most of her contacts were merely friends. Hearing this, Kai also remembered her feat during military training. The books would feel as heavy as iron in other people's hands, but she carried them in one hand, lithe like a swallow. He silently retracted his hand.
"By the way, do you want some computer science notes?"
Kai pointed to Gary.
"Gary has already summarized the essence of every topic. Let Kara bring them to you next time."
Gary was a little cold, and upon hearing this, he just nodded and said in a clear voice,
"But Luke is an excellent graduate of the computer science department, so you might not need it."
The 3 of them walked on the road, discussing the series of issues in the science and technology department. Not many people were at the school gate. Glancing around, Bessy saw Michael among the crowd at a glance, standing out from everyone else. "I'm leaving now." She waved to them and walked towards Michael. He casually stood by the side of the road with his mobile phone, his eyes sweeping across the crowd indifferently. His posture was lazy and his expression was nonchalant. He didn't usually drive when he came to the school, since it wasn't far. Furthermore, he was afraid of adversely affecting her. Noticing her knitted eyebrows, he stopped and also frowned. Then he reached out for Bessy's books, glancing at Gary and Kai. Both of them looked okay, but in Bessy's eyes, they probably weren't of high standards. Michael just politely greeted them. Kai responded quickly, "Hello." After Bessy and Michael left, Kai stared at their backs for a long time before returning to his senses. His first impression of the man was that he was very handsome. Although his moves and his tone seemed very polite, Kai felt an inexplicable strong sense of oppression from him. His temperament and even his style of talking were extraordinary, cold, and arrogant. Especially considering his age, he didn't look like the society person as Denora had described, and seemed only 2 years older than them. Yet he felt increasingly inferior the longer he stared at him. Looking away, he touched his chin. "Everyone in the class can give up on being her boyfriend now, but Bessy is really a little strange." "Why?" Gary walked towards the snack street. "Isn't it weird? She's carrying a knapsack that is old and worn out, but she's also wearing very expensive limited edition sneakers." Kai pondered and couldn't help smirking. These kinds of sneakers are usually bought as part of a collection by sneakers fans. Only someone like her would wear them. And the thermos she brought to military training, do you remember? The diamonds on it are real. That night, Rosemary came over to eat after hearing that Bessy had returned. Sitting casually at the dining table, she looked around the empty table and knocked on it. "Where's Bessy?" she asked. Sitting opposite her, Michael held his fork with his beautiful fingers and casually explained, "She's reading in the study. So hard-working, Rosemary put her hands down and stood up, about to head upstairs. Without looking up, Michael slowly said, "You can try to get her to take a break." Having turned around already, Rosemary squeezed her wrists and then sat back down with a sheepish smile after 10 seconds. "I remember Northwestern University's teaching system is very strict. I won't bother Bessy." After eating, Michael went upstairs to see Bessy, but instead of leaving, Rosemary sat on the sofa and attacked Marvin with the World Poker Tour's affairs. Marvin kept fiddling with the flowers without saying anything. Resting her chin in her hands, Rosemary smiled. "Marvin, you've spread your wings." Although she hadn't received any reply, she guessed from Marvin's attitude that there must indeed be some inside story about the World Poker Tour's contract. Folding her arms, she glanced upstairs. Marvin was speechless. Upstairs, Michael took a thermos into the study. He used this study often. A pot of mint flowers sat on the desk and the curtains were half drawn. Michael glanced around and saw Bessy lying on the table. Only half of her face was exposed, and her eyelids were half closed. The coldness had faded from her face and her legs were leaning against the bottom of the table haphazardly. Even while sleeping, she still seemed not to be trifled with. She probably hadn't slept well in the past week or she wouldn't have fallen asleep while reading. Other than in the school doctor's office at the beginning of their friendship, Michael rarely saw her in this state. He rubbed his eyebrows involuntarily, then walked over slowly and gently placed the teacup on her table. She didn't wake up. He took the pen out of her hand and called her twice, but she still didn't wake up. She seemed really sleepy. Standing by the table for 2 minutes, he went through a fierce debate in his mind about whether to wake her up to eat or to let her continue sleeping. In the end, he couldn't bear to wake her up. He bent down to pick her up easily and then opened the door. Bessy's room. Episode 288. The opening of a good show. Instead of worrying further about this, the person in charge just typed Bessy's name into the list and pondered out loud. "President Flores is very confident this year. It'll probably be another good show." Northwestern University had done a similar thing before and reported a freshman named Luke, who had shown off his brilliance in the laboratory. At that time, the laboratory had made several calls before confirming that Northwestern University's president hadn't given the wrong name. But Luke's name had at least been reported at the end of March. It was only December and the overall class time new students had received was less than half of what Luke had been given when he took the exam. What was Northwestern University doing? When Alyssa came out of the bathroom at the Northwestern University girls' dormitory, Bessy's table was already empty. "She went to the library again?" Alyssa asked with a lower voice. Wasn't she too hard-working? Other than during bedtime, Alyssa hardly saw Bessy all day. Lifting her head from the textbook, Kara slightly frowned. Yeah, her midterm exam is the computer science exam. A double degree program is difficult. Northwestern University's subjects were difficult, and it already wasn't easy to complete a major. Thus, double degree majors naturally had to work harder than ordinary people. Opposite, Denora had finished packing her books and was putting on earrings while looking in the mirror. Hearing this, she turned her head and said, "She still hasn't given up on the double degree?" No. Kara checked her watch. There was an open class tonight, so she put away her book. Suddenly remembering something, she turned to look at Denora. "Denora, do you have tickets? My class representative wants them." "Your class representative?" Denora finished with her earrings and started putting on her lipstick. "Gary." Kara propped her hand on the back of the chair. Denora paused while applying her lipstick. Geniuses from all over the country were gathered at Northwestern University. It wasn't easy for new students to make a name for themselves unless they were very good-looking like Bessy, who had godly visuals and had shot to fame during military training. As for the other new students, not many were outstanding. But Denora knew of Gary. He was Evanston's top scorer for the final exams, with a score of 728. He had even been on the news for several days after the release of the results. Having perfected her lipstick, Denora took her book and glanced at Kara. "I don't have class tonight. Coincidentally, I'll go to the open class with you guys." In Northwestern University's Student Union office, the president was in a meeting with the ministers and vice ministers of various departments. 2 knocks sounded on the door. Jerome opened the door and entered in a hurry. He had yet to change out of his lab coat that night. The president of the Student Union quickly got up. "President Jerome, why are you here?" Jerome was the Student Union's previous president. Glancing around, he asked,
"Do you still have my tickets here?"
The reason why the Student Union had tickets to Luke's talk was solely because of Jerome. "Yes." The president hurriedly stopped the meeting and stood up to take Jerome to the office. He opened the drawer and pulled out the tickets. "There are 4 tickets left." Jerome glanced at them and saw that they were second-row tickets.
"That's fine."
He reached out for them. Holding the tickets, he didn't converse further with the president and just flipped through the information on his phone with his head lowered. Bessy's dormitory address was written on his phone. It was almost 9 p.m. and the street lights on the campus had gradually turned on. Jerome pressed on his bicycle's handbrakes and called Bessy to ask where she was. She was still in the library. Many people were inside, and the library assistant would normally clear your space if the seat was empty for more than 20 minutes. So Bessy didn't go down to meet him. Putting down her pen, she took her phone to the outdoor balcony and called Kara. "Where are you?" she asked while casually leaning against the wall. Kara gave her an address. Recalling the map of Northwestern University in her mind, Bessy realized she was very close and touched her chin thoughtfully. "Wait there a few minutes. I'm going to ask my classmate to pass you something." On the other end of the phone, Kara and the others had just left the teaching building. The people from Kai's dormitory were enthusiastically chatting with Denora.
"You're from the software engineering department, but you can still get 2 tickets. Our department's seniors didn't even save any for the new students."
"I just happen to know a senior who knows the previous president." Smiling lightly, Denora glanced at Gary, who was walking behind them with his hands in his pocket.
"Kara doesn't even talk about Bessy. Denora, do you know what she does all day?"
The boys in Kai's dormitory were obviously more interested in Bessy. Denora's smile remained unchanged. She probably went to see her boyfriend. I think her boyfriend has already graduated a long time ago, and is a member of high society, so he doesn't appear on campus often.
"Boyfriend?"
Kai's roommate immediately beat his chest in dismay. After a long while, he recovered and sighed.
"Sure enough, beautiful women are always taken."
Denora maintained her smile without saying anything. While walking in front, Kara hung up the phone and said very apologetically, "I'm sorry, I have to wait for Bessy's classmate. You guys can head back first."
"It doesn't matter, it won't take long,"
Kai said, and the others immediately said that they could wait together. He glanced at Gary, who also nodded, so they stood there waiting for Bessy's classmate. Within a few minutes, Jerome saw Kara. At a glance, he recognized the girl with a fair-skinned baby face who was wearing a white t-shirt and blue denim hot pants. He squeezed his bicycle's handbrake and placed his feet on the ground.
"You're Bessy Miller's roommate?"
"Yes, hello." Kara politely greeted him. As a member of the student union, Denora had seen the photos at the student union's office and recognized him as their last president, Jerome Childs. Glancing at her, Jerome didn't recognize her and just nodded very perfunctorily.
Hello, this is what Luke wants to pass to Bessy.
He took out a few tickets from his pocket and handed them to Kara.
I have matters to attend to, so I'll head back now.
Those who could enter Northwestern University weren't ordinary people. Although Jerome was very ordinary compared to Luke's resume, he was still considered extremely good compared to other people. As the student union president and a member of the laboratory, he had the right to be proud. Other than Kara, whom Bessy told him about, he didn't bother greeting the others. After exchanging phone numbers with Kara, he left on his bicycle. He rushed back to sleep. From his clothes, it was very obvious that he was from the laboratory. His life was the dream of countless people in Northwestern University's school forum. After hearing Jerome mention Luke, Kara was rather calm when receiving the tickets. Glancing at Bessy's Twitter message, she turned to Gary. Bessy has 4 tickets, but she's not going. I'll give them to you guys. The boys in the class had taken good care of the only 2 girls in their class ever since the military training and were very close to them, so Kara wasn't overly formal with them. Staring at Jerome's back, Kai confirmed his suspicions with her.
Kara, was that the senior from the laboratory just now?
Yeah, Kara calmly replied. Denora also stared after Jerome, and her feelings were extremely complicated. First, it had been the World Poker Tour's computer. She originally thought that Bessy's boyfriend who had stepped into society had helped her. But what about Jerome now? She pursed her lips involuntarily. Bessy's methods were really not to be underestimated. Instead of going to Luke's speech, Bessy spent her time either in the library or in the nuclear engineering classroom. Apart from bedtime, even Kara rarely saw her. It was Saturday. There weren't any open classes or electives, and the library was closed. Both Alyssa and Kara were in the bedroom. Kara saw that Bessy was very busy, but she still wanted to pull her to play games every day. Other than her, Bessy's high school class also felt the same way. Looking up from the music score she was working on, Bessy said with a throbbing head, "Wait, I'll put you into the game group." Kara regretfully nodded. She had a lot of groups, so adding another one didn't matter. "Okay, put me in." Bessy found the group built by Paul and her high school classmates, then put Kara into it. She chatted privately with Paul and asked him to verify her. On the other end of the message, Paul received Bessy's news. Hearing that Kara was Bessy's roommate and had even been introduced to this group, he immediately went to verify her. After he tagged Kara and the people in the group all saw that she had been invited by Bessy, they basically lined up to welcome her and even made an appointment to play games together. The group was very joyful, so Kara also added them casually. Slightly unaccustomed to the enthusiasm, she said a few words, then opened the group information to take a look. The group's name was "Today's Another Day to Pay Homage to Bessy." Giggling, she closed the group chat. After Bessy put Kara into the group, she took a picture of her written music score, clicked on Noah's profile, and directly sent it to him. Then, she started packing her books. "Are you going to the library today?" Alyssa climbed off her bed. Bessy picked up her backpack. "No, I'm going back home." While pulling the zipper closed, she returned a message to Michael, then left the bedroom after bidding farewell to Kara and Alyssa. Denora didn't speak. Previously, she basically socialized with people from the student union. But these 2 days, she realized Kara was close to Gary, so she had subconsciously stayed behind in the dormitory. Unfortunately, Kara, Gary, Kai, and the others weren't easy to approach, and she had achieved no progress even after several days. After Bessy left, she turned on her phone, clicked on Sherry's Twitter profile, and sent her a message. "Cousin, can you lend me your poker tournament account?" Episode 289, inviting Kara to join Bessy's high school game group. Carrying a black backpack, Bessy went to Dean Soup's office for a new set of books before going out. Downstairs, she bumped into Kai and Gary, both holding documents.
Bessy!
Kai immediately waved at her.
"Where are you going? Are you going to the snack street too?"
Gary also waved to her. "No, I'm going out." She held her books with the other hand and lowered her eyelashes, covering the fact that her eyes were bloodshot. She carried 7 nuclear engineering textbooks in total, each of them rather heavy. The weight of the 7 books amounted to a total of several kilograms.
"I'll carry them for you."
Kai said very gentlemanly. If the other boys in the class saw him letting one of the only 2 girls in their class carry a stack of books by herself without his help, he would certainly be scolded by them. Weighing the books in her hand, Bessy replied, "Thanks, but they're not heavy." In the past few days, lots of rumors about her had spread on the forum, but the boys from her class didn't believe them. After military training, they understood her temper and knew she never had much contact with boys usually. Most of her contacts were merely friends. Hearing this, Kai also remembered her feat during military training. The books would feel as heavy as iron in other people's hands, but she carried them in one hand, lithe like a swallow. He silently retracted his hand.
By the way, do you want some computer science notes?
Kai pointed to Gary.
Gary has already summarized the essence of every topic. Let Kara bring them to you next time.
Gary was a little cold, and upon hearing this, he just nodded and said in a clear voice,
"But Luke is an excellent graduate of the computer science department, so you might not need it."
The 3 of them walked on the road, discussing the series of issues in the science and technology department. Not many people were at the school gate. Glancing around, Bessy saw Michael among the crowd at a glance, standing out from everyone else. "I'm leaving now." She waved to them and walked towards Michael. He casually stood by the side of the road with his mobile phone, his eyes sweeping across the crowd indifferently. His posture was lazy and his expression was nonchalant. He didn't usually drive when he came to the school, since it wasn't far. Furthermore, he was afraid of adversely affecting her. Noticing her knitted eyebrows, he stopped and also frowned. Then he reached out for Bessy's books, glancing at Gary and Kai. Both of them looked okay, but in Bessy's eyes, they probably weren't of high standards. Michael just politely greeted them. Kai responded quickly, "Hello." After Bessy and Michael left, Kai stared at their backs for a long time before returning to his senses. His first impression of the man was that he was very handsome. Although his moves and his tone seemed very polite, Kai felt an inexplicable strong sense of oppression from him. His temperament and even his style of talking were extraordinary, cold, and arrogant. Especially considering his age, he didn't look like the society person as Denora had described, and seemed only 2 years older than them. Yet he felt increasingly inferior the longer he stared at him. Looking away, he touched his chin.
"Everyone in the class can give up on being her boyfriend now, but Bessy is really a little strange." "Why?"
Gary walked towards the snack street.
"Isn't it weird? She's carrying a knapsack that is old and worn out, but she's also wearing very expensive limited edition sneakers."
Kai pondered and couldn't help smirking.
"These kinds of sneakers are usually bought as part of a collection by sneakers fans. Only someone like her would wear them. And the thermos she brought to military training, do you remember? The diamonds on it are real."
That night, Rosemary came over to eat after hearing that Bessy had returned. Sitting casually at the dining table, she looked around the empty table and knocked on it. "Where's Bessy?" she asked. Sitting opposite her, Michael held his fork with his beautiful fingers and casually explained,
"She's reading in the study.
So hard-working, Rosemary put her hands down and stood up, about to head upstairs. Without looking up, Michael slowly said,
"You can try to get her to take a break."
Having turned around already, Rosemary squeezed her wrists and then sat back down with a sheepish smile after 10 seconds. "I remember Northwestern University's teaching system is very strict. I won't bother Bessy." After eating, Michael went upstairs to see Bessy, but instead of leaving, Rosemary sat on the sofa and attacked Marvin with the World Poker Tour's affairs. Marvin kept fiddling with the flowers without saying anything. Resting her chin in her hands, Rosemary smiled. "Marvin, you've spread your wings." Although she hadn't received any reply, she guessed from Marvin's attitude that there must indeed be some inside story about the World Poker Tour's contract. Folding her arms, she glanced upstairs. Marvin was speechless. Upstairs, Michael took a thermos into the study. He used this study often. A pot of mint flowers sat on the desk and the curtains were half drawn. Michael glanced around and saw Bessy lying on the table. Only half of her face was exposed, and her eyelids were half closed. The coldness had faded from her face, and her legs were leaning against the bottom of the table haphazardly. Even while sleeping, she still seemed not to be trifled with. She probably hadn't slept well in the past week, or she wouldn't have fallen asleep while reading. Other than in the school doctor's office at the beginning of their friendship, Michael rarely saw her in this state. He rubbed his eyebrows involuntarily, then walked over slowly and gently placed the teacup on her table. She didn't wake up. He took the pen out of her hand and called her twice, but she still didn't wake up. She seemed really sleepy. Standing by the table for 2 minutes, he went through a fierce debate in his mind about whether to wake her up to eat or to let her continue sleeping. In the end, he couldn't bear to wake her up. He bent down to pick her up easily and then opened the door. Bessy's room wasn't locked, so he went in and placed her down gently on the bed. He carefully removed his left hand from under her body and then cautiously withdrew his right hand off of the pillow, trying not to wake her up. Bessy moved a little, her eyebrows knitted. Appearing a little impatient, she rested her head on his right hand. As her slender hair weaved through his fingers, he moved lightly and pulled up her quilt with his left hand. After trying several times, he still failed to pull out his right hand from under her head. Sitting on the edge of the bed, he was silent for a while before snorting.
Do you know who I am?
Bessy slept quietly, without answering. The next day, Bessy got up very early. Glancing around the room, she pressed her temple with her right hand, looking thoughtfully at the door. Going downstairs with her thermos, she bumped into Marvin.
Miss Miller, good morning.
She raised her hand to check the time on her phone. It was 7 a.m., which was considered late compared to her usual time. But she had slept quite comfortably last night, so the redness in her eyes had faded a lot. She went to the kitchen to take a glass of milk, glancing around the hall. No one else was around. Marvin immediately understood.
Michael has gone to Northwestern University.
Just at that moment, Michael opened the door and came in, holding 2 pieces of paper. He saw Bessy and directly handed them to her.
Should I bring back the things from your dormitory?
While sitting on the chair and drinking milk, she read the papers handed to her. It was a notice to live outside the campus, signed by Dean Soup. The next one was a letter of guarantee, signed by Michael. Glancing over, Marvin said in surprise,
Miss Miller isn't living at school anymore? I'll go and get the flowers back.
Bessy casually crossed her legs and glanced at the school notice in her hand. It was always hard to go from extravagance to frugality. She could still bear it at the beginning of military training and could go to the mountain with heavy loads to roast a pig when she was bored. But later on, after studying day and night, and coupled with the crowded school and noise, she didn't manage to sleep well for a week. She seemed to have returned to her early days in middle school and got up to read with headphones at night. She turned to look at Michael. He folded his arms and raised an eyebrow, glancing at her with a straight face. Not long after that, Marvin rushed to the bedroom to pick up Bessy's flowers and other necessities. He spoke with the resident advisor for the dormitory. As soon as she saw the word Clark on his ID card, she personally took him to the bedroom for Bessy's stuff. Marvin didn't even glance sideways along the way. After arriving in the bedroom, he checked with Kara and the others before entering to collect Bessy's things. He didn't dare to look around and only focused on Bessy's table. There weren't many things to bring. Other than the potted flower and her computer, there was also the manuscript that Michael had ordered him to pick up. He didn't bring back any clothes, since she had plenty of them in the Highline apartments. Just then, Denora returned. When she opened the door, she saw a familiar man's back at Bessy's table. His back seemed a little cold and not to be trifled with. Taken aback, Denora walked over to Kara. This is... Kara tilted her head and explained, he's packing up Bessy's things. She's not staying on campus anymore. Was he a family member? Denora's imagination ran wild. Marvin had already packed the things. He held the black suitcase in his left hand and the flower pot in his right. His body was imposing. His features were cold. His speech was strict, and his eyes shot rays of coldness. Mr. Marvin? Denora almost whispered. With the suitcase in hand, he was headed out the door. Moving back, he heard the Highline apartment and stopped to look at her. Episode 291. Roommate, he politely greeted her. I'm Sherry's cousin. 292. We've met at my cousin's birthday party. Real estate buyer. Denora. Episode 293. Play. Episode 290. Moving back to the Highline Apartments, Sherry's birthday party hadn't been small. It had been filled with people who could party without care in Evanston. Denora hadn't known many of them. But she had known Marvin as one of the people at the center of the circle at that time. Hearing the words Sherry, Marvin's polite expression changed, and it became cold as iron. Unlike Bessy and Michael, he had yet to reach the point where he could forget things easily. People like Denora were plentiful in Evanston, and he couldn't remember everyone. If it had been a year ago, he wouldn't even have stopped to greet her. But now, not only was Sherry no longer his idol, but the most important thing was, both Christopher and Patrick had very sternly warned him of her. Although he wasn't very bright, he still remembered his brother's words carefully. Denora had never talked to Marvin, but had heard people mention him. He was a part of the Clark family, and she could only stare at him from afar during Sherry's banquet. She still smiled, despite his cold expression. Tucking her hair behind her ear, she said as if nothing was wrong. "My cousin is going to take the intermediate membership exam soon." Marvin adjusted his hold on the suitcase and left without hesitation. Like an unsentimental bellhop, he went straight downstairs. Back in the bedroom, Denora stared after him, and her smile fell. She sat back down on her stool in a daze. Alyssa put her book on the table. "Do you know Bessy's family?" "Yeah." Taking her phone, Denora looked absent-mindedly out of the balcony. Kara sat down on a chair, holding her chin indifferently in her hand. "Did you hear? His last name is Clark, the top of the several families that can't be messed with in school. Next time, try harder to ride on Bessy's coattails." She smiled. Alyssa nodded in agreement. "Exactly." They chatted and laughed in good moods, but Denora didn't think it was funny at all. Marvin was the most valued subordinate of the Clark family's crown prince, Michael, and could enter and leave their house as he liked. It was a well-known fact in her social circle that most of the Clark family's heirs had to address Marvin respectfully. Was Bessy's boyfriend Marvin? How could she have anything to do with the Clark family? In the White family's house, Principal White entered a room where Kenneth was sitting. Principal White had opened the market during his 3-month-long stay in Austria. After returning to Evanston, it took a week before he started organizing the White family's affairs.
"Grandpa."
Kenneth stood up from the chair, his eyes cold.
"From now on, you'll take care of the Moss family's affairs in Austria. I've already found a successor for the Research Institute."
Principal White glanced out the window. He used to entertain the idea of Kenneth being together with Bessy. At that time, one White family branch would have been in charge of the White family's authority, while the other would be in charge of the Research Institute. He had even specifically ruled out public opinion and transferred Kenneth from Evanston to Brightbow High School. But he eventually fancied that Anne, and in the end, Bessy had been snatched by the Clark family. When Kenneth first heard Michael mention this back in Chicago, he hadn't known who the successor was. It wasn't until after the final exam, when Bessy got full marks in physics and mathematics, that he came to a realization. So, at that time, he had rushed to Chicago urgently, wanting to ask Bessy about it. But he had returned to Austria after failing to meet with her.
"Yes, Grandpa."
He bid farewell to Principal White before leaving the study. After he left, Principal White dialed Bessy's cell phone. Bessy was in the study upstairs at Michael's apartment. Michael was using her phone to play games and was helping Tucker by recording a video of his screen. After sending the screen recording to him, he received a reply after a long while.
"You can't play as fast as my sister."
Michael bit his cigarette and slightly narrowed his eyes. He was about to reply to him when a call appeared at the top of the phone, with only one word written. White. Bessy's saved contact names were extremely messy. There were strange names like Bird and Dragon. Michael had even seen one called Barbecue. Picking up the call, Michael headed downstairs and politely said,
"Wait a minute, Bessy's reading upstairs."
On the other end of the phone, Principal White was silent for a while.
"Why are you answering her phone?"
Back in Chicago, he had requested that Michael look out for his successor, but now that Michael had snatched her away, he felt extremely uncomfortable.
"Mr. White?"
Michael was also silent for a while. He stood on the stairs and paused for a while before walking upstairs.
Wait a moment.
He opened the study door and saw Bessy writing in her textbook.
It's Mr. White.
He handed her the phone. Putting the pen down on the table, Bessy took the phone and answered. Principal White?
Do you have time?
Principal White stood by the window, looking outside with deep eyes.
If so, let's continue to talk about Chicago.
Wait. Bessy put her hand to her temple. Wait until I've finished my midterm exam.
Midterm exam?
Principal White sounded surprised. He held the phone with his other hand and asked,
What major are you studying?
Bessy told him. Principal White paused and then said, Not bad. Both were difficult majors, but they were related to each other. Since she had agreed to be his successor and was also in Evanston, he wasn't particularly anxious. She naturally wouldn't break her promise. The matter of his successor mustn't be rushed, and it involved many forces. When the time came, Evanston would be in a pitiful state. Before that, he had to make thorough preparations in all aspects. They exchanged a few more words before hanging up. Bessy leaned back in her chair and passed the phone to Michael. With a little bit of water left in his cup, he poured it out before refilling it, not taking the phone from her. Raising an eyebrow, she looked a little peevish. She originally thought he was going to ask about Principal White. Pulling a chair over, he pointed to her phone and said matter-of-factly,
Your brother scolded me.
Scolded him? Bessy lowered her head and flipped through Twitter to see what Tucker had said. She slowly replied to him. He played it for the first time like you. You're worse than him. After replying to Tucker, she handed the phone back to Michael. He took it and glanced at it, then stood up and left with the phone. Closing the study door, he clicked on Tucker's profile, and while the other party was typing, he sent a message.
Terrible brother. Smiley face.
In less than a second after confirming that Tucker had seen this sentence, he quickly withdrew it and sent another smiley face. Downstairs, Marvin returned with Bessy's luggage. He put the suitcase in the middle of the hall and carefully placed the flower pot by the window. He couldn't help frowning at the sight of the wilted leaves. Bessy just couldn't take care of flowers. He had just picked up the tools when Patrick came upstairs.
Patrick, why are you back?
Patrick glanced around the hall.
Michael told me to come. Sit first.
Michael said. He was still casually playing the game. Taking the shovel, Marvin sat down with Patrick.
What's the matter? Something important.
Michael's voice was unhurried.
Patrick, how long do you need to move the Central Financial Resources back? The entire center? The same one as the World Poker Tours?
Patrick was surprised. Michael leaned on the sofa.
Yeah, it took the World Poker Tour more than a year to do it. They only started settling in Evanston last year, but we have several strongholds here already. If we were to move the finances, it'll take a few months faster than them, but Michael, are you sure?
The corner of Patrick's mouth twitched. Was he trying to make Evanston explode?
Yes.
Michael was still playing the game.
I can't afford not to see Mr. White.
Patrick stared at him. He didn't even see Joshua, but he wanted to see Mr. White? It was just that... What did this have to do with Mr. White? After finishing a round, Michael looked at the screen recording before sending it to Tucker. Patrick took out his work computer and quickly logged onto the website. He took the time to glance at Michael.
Then I want to hold a high-level meeting right away. What's the specific reason?
Michael continued playing on the phone and just said,
Just do it.
Nothing else. He only glanced upstairs and stretched his hand lazily to rub his forehead. If Joshua knew about the successor of the largest research institute in Evanston, he wouldn't be able to sit still. Michael hadn't read too much into it when Mr. White mentioned his successor back in Chicago. He just wondered how crazy the person was for rejecting him. It wasn't until a series of things came together later when he noticed Mr. White's anxiety over Bessy's injured hand, that he started harboring suspicions in his heart. Later, his suspicions were confirmed when her scores in the joint exam came out. He slowly tapped the phone with his fingers. Since Patrick didn't dare go to the study room upstairs occupied by Bessy, he carried his computer to his room downstairs. He had already contacted all the higher-ups, and now he initiated a video call. As he placed the computer on the table, several people sitting at a big round table appeared on the screen. Their expressions were serious, and their voices were heavy.
Mr. Clark, what happened to the corporation?
Such emergency meetings rarely occurred.
Move the headquarters.
Patrick pulled out a document from his desk and flipped through it. In the video, a middle-aged man with gold-rimmed glasses paused.
Move. To where?
To Evanston. Patrick raised his eyes. He had already ordered his subordinates to choose a base in Evanston.
Evanston?
The group of people in the video exchanged glances.
I heard that the World Poker Tour just moved to Evanston.
Why did they have to move their headquarters to Evanston all of a sudden? Why was Evanston attracting all the big bosses? Were they gathering together for a meeting? Episode 291. A Successor.
Selling clothes.
Patrick casually replied as he logged into the social software, received a copy of the information he'd requested, and clicked on it to select the address. Marvin frowned.
Huh?
The next day on Monday morning, Michael drove Bessy to the school gate. Holding a book as well as a notebook in one hand and a cap on the other, she got out of the car and waved back to him without looking. In the driver's seat, Michael leaned back lazily, staring at her quietly with his dark eyes. When his cell phone rang, he didn't rush to pick it up. It wasn't until Bessy's figure disappeared that he lazily reached out and looked at it. It was a call from Rosemary. Picking up, he looked away and said,
"Speak."
Rosemary was used to his attitude. She was still in the Clark family's old house at the moment. Glancing at Joshua and Aaron, she walked into the courtyard and glanced at a bird perched on the promenade opposite.
"Remember the lot for sale opposite my office building?" "Why?"
Michael started the car, resting his right hand on the steering wheel and holding his phone in his left hand. His eyelashes drooped slightly as he looked at the steering wheel. After a while, he let go of it. Someone wants to buy it. Rosemary stuck one hand in her pocket. With such things, the person in charge of the financial center would naturally notify the Clark family as soon as possible. Her company's address was in the financial center building, and although she only rented one floor, each floor was large enough for a medium-sized enterprise. The scale of the building opposite was 100 times larger than hers, which was why she was surprised. Even after counting the current domestic enterprises, she still couldn't figure out who had the wealth to buy it. Knocking on the steering wheel without a significant change in his expression, Michael just indifferently replied,
I'll hang up if there's nothing else."
Rosemary didn't talk smack with him now and soon heard the phone's busy tone. Looking down at the phone, the corners of her mouth twitched involuntarily and she returned to the Clark family's house. While holding a cup of tea, Aaron saw her coming in with her phone and said in a slightly mocking tone,
"I already told you. What's the point of saying so much nonsense to him?"
At the same time, Bessy walked into the nuclear engineering classroom with her books. It was just past 7 o'clock at the moment and not many people were around. As soon as she arrived on the second floor, she saw Kara leaning on the corridor, waiting for people. She seemed a little sleepy and was yawning lazily. But when Kara saw her walking up the stairs, she stood up straight and exclaimed, "Bessy! Looking for me?" Bessy calmly opened the lecture hall door with a key. She found a quiet position by the door, threw her books down with a thud, and then raised her chin to gesture for Kara to sit in front of her. "Tell me, what's the matter?" She sat down against the wall with her eyebrows slightly lowered. "Bessy, do you have an issue with Denora?" Kara casually asked while lying on the table next to her. Flipping through the new textbook, Bessy lowered her eyes and calmly replied, "No, I've never hit her before." Kara almost choked to death. She glanced speechlessly at her. Finally, she said, "I know." What did Bessy mean by that? "You came to find me just for this?" Bessy glanced up. Sitting up straight, Kara continued, "No, the class representative asked me to ask if you have time this Saturday night. Other classes had dinner after military training, but our class had yet to hold one." Upon hearing this, Bessy looked away nonchalantly. "Just tell me the specific time and place." "Okay." Shocked, Kara stood up with her hands on the table. I'll tell the class representative later. I'll go eat breakfast now. Bye. She walked to the door and waved to her as she left. After eating, Kara walked to the teaching building. Her phone vibrated with a message from the student union, informing her of a meeting at noon. At noon, instead of eating after class, she rushed to the complex. The student union was divided into different grades, and the office department had the most authority. Kara and Denora both entered the office department at the same time. During the meeting, Kara and a short-haired girl both sat at the back of the table, while Denora sat beside the office director. Everyone in the office knew that Denora was close to the seniors and that she was the student union's most famous newcomer. After the meeting, several directors went to dinner. Glancing at the rest of the people in the office, Denora pursed her lips and smiled. Who else wants to play games with me tonight?
Me! Beautiful Denora, bring me along.
Leaving the office with its rare lively atmosphere, Kara took her textbooks back to the bedroom, followed by the short-haired girl. Kara, what happened to you and Denora? I remember you two were very good roommates and even played together a few days ago. Why haven't I seen you two playing games together in the past few days? It's nothing, Kara lightly said. Glancing behind them to make sure they were alone, the short-haired girl continued in a whisper. People in our department know that Denora has people supporting her. In Evanston's deep waters, it's best not to have a beef with her over anything. The short-haired girl was also in the software engineer department, where Denora was famous, so she knew much more than Kara. She was also Kara's only friend outside of the science and technology department. Upon hearing this, Kara turned and smiled at her. Thanks. No need to thank me, just remember what I said. The short-haired girl patted her on the shoulder. Our professor talked about the World Poker Tour in class before, but I don't think you've heard of it. It's too troublesome to explain. Just remember to avoid Denora. On the way to the cafeteria, Kara took out her phone to search for the World Poker Tour. A week passed by quickly, and Saturday soon arrived. The computer science department gathered together. Bessy was the last to arrive. As a local, Gary had chosen a large room based on the class's specific situation. Inside were 3 tables and a few pieces of entertainment equipment. While the boys drank alcohol, Bessy and Kara sat beside them, drinking juice. A series of facilities such as billiard tables and computers were also placed not far away. Instead of drinking too much, some of the boys took pool cues to play billiards, and some took microphones to sing. Some yelled that they should play games on the computer, while some played card games. Kai and Gary came over with cans of beer. Kai sat down opposite Kara and Bessy.
Why don't you guys play with them?
Too lazy. Kara leaned back in her chair.
I can't believe someone like you who loves to play games can be lazy too.
Taking a sip of beer, Kai chuckled.
Why haven't I seen you teaming up with Denora recently?
Before he finished speaking, Kara glanced at him. He smiled sheepishly and stopped talking. Playing the barrier-breaking game on her phone with one hand, Bessy took a glass of water and slowly drank it. Denora? She asked. Kara had also mentioned her before without finishing her words. Kai quickly explained to her.
The one in your dorm room. She played games with us on Monday, although her game skills are average. Her level is pretty high.
Having heard enough of Denora, Kara put down the cup and stood up. Sitting in front of an empty machine, she logged into her game account. Who wants to team up with me?
No, Kara, we've already formed a team. We'll bring you along in the next game.
The boys immediately replied. While the game loaded, Kara casually clicked on it. Someone had sent a message to the team that Bessy had pulled her into. She casually clicked it. The game's voice channel was turned on. As soon as Kara entered, a surprised male voice sounded in the chat.
Who is this?
He asked. Bessy's roommate, someone replied. Kara glanced at the voice page. The reply was spoken by a female with the username Big Forest. Realizing that this was the group Bessy introduced to her, she greeted them very cautiously. She looked at the game registrations of the other 4 people and was shocked to find that they were all master-level accounts or higher. Her master-level account was already considered powerful in the computer science class, so she often teamed up with the boys. But she didn't expect Bessy's high school classmates to be even better. I hope I won't hold you guys back. Since she had already joined, she couldn't really retreat now. After locking in the teams, the 5 players entered the arena page together. She temporarily let go of the mouse and took a sip of water before turning back to check out her teammates' levels. The first column was Big Forest's level, which was Master. The second was Supreme. The third was Supreme. The fourth teammate was Guru? What the fuck? A guru? Stupefied, she glanced down at the list. Master, Guru, Supreme? Although she hadn't drunk alcohol, she still felt like she was very drunk at the moment. Such high levels were a rare sight in the game, and other than the professional players in Team OST, they were few and far between among players. But she saw so many of them this time, and they were her teammates. Having loaded the game, the 5 of them entered the arena, but Kara didn't get to showcase her skills properly. She wasn't very involved in the round and only won by chance. In less than 10 minutes, the next game started, and she was pulled into another group. This time, the players were different. She only recognized Big Forest and felt a little regretful that the teammates with the highest levels weren't her teammates anymore. It was still a 5-person team, and she still had the lowest level of the group. Kara was shocked. "Oh my god, are you from a professional team?" she finally asked.
No,
a frivolous male voice said. "Then how is your account level so high, and where did you get so many stars?" Kara clenched the mouse. Episode 292. A Mysterious Real Estate Buyer.
Is it considered many?
The male player had entered the arena with the 3 stars and replied in surprise.
We only have 3 stars each, but Mary alone has 6.
One person with so many stars? Denora's master account with 1 star was already envied by everyone, but that was considered low to them. Sitting there, she stared at the game screen, her mind in a mess. All thoughts were wiped clean from her mind, and she even forgot about Denora. All she wanted to do was rush to the other end of the network cable and grab hold of the talking boy.
Are you okay?
The boy at the computer beside her finished a game and glanced at her.
We're finished. Let's team up.
Team up? She reached out to grab her hair, feeling a little crazy. She felt like she was daydreaming. What group had Bessy added her to? After this round, she finally went to find Bessy with a head full of questions, only to find that she was gone. She immediately took out her phone to call her. Bessy was taking off her shoes at the entrance to the apartment. "What's the matter?" She slipped off her shoes and walked inside, sitting on the sofa with her legs slightly draped over the side. Kara was still in a daze. "Bessy, how do you know all of those amazing players?" High school classmates. Bessy knew Kara had started to play games with Paul and the others and wasn't surprised by the question. She hung up after a few more words.
"Michael,"
Patrick said as he came upstairs with a document. When he saw Bessy, he paused before greeting her respectfully.
"Miss Miller."
Michael had just arrived and finished taking off his shoes and was walking over. He sat beside Bessy and hugged a pillow before holding out his hand to Patrick.
"The address has been finalized. This is the document sent from the higher-ups."
Patrick sat opposite and handed the document to him. Coming out of the kitchen, Marvin handed Bessy a cup of tea. He asked upon hearing Patrick,
"The place where you're selling clothes?"
"Huh?" While casually playing games on her phone, Bessy raised an eyebrow. "Who's selling clothes?"
"My brother."
Marvin carefully placed the cup of tea beside her.
"Patrick, where's your company selling the clothes? How big is the scale?"
Patrick didn't bother to reply to him. The dinner party continued after Bessy left.
"Why are you looking for her?"
Gary glanced quickly at Kara, leaning on the table while playing cards with someone. Plopping down onto the sofa expressionlessly, Kara glanced down at the phone. "She pulled me into this gaming group previously."
"If it's just a gaming group, what's the problem?"
Kai took a pool cue from the side and handed another to her. Mechanically reaching out for it, she continued. Looking up, she stared blankly at him. Most of the people in the group are already guru or supreme levels. The cue in Kai's hand shook, and he held the table with his hands, unable to return to his senses.
"Then, what about the minority?"
he asked quietly. "The minority are masters," Kara said. Kai's hand shook again and his body sunk lower. He stared at her.
Can I meet this group of amazing players? I also want to be on the same stage as them.
Gary watched the whole process speechlessly. Hadn't Kara just said it was just a group? In the end, Kara added both Kai and Gary to the game group. Northwestern University conducted midterm exams in early November. At this time, it was the end of October, less than 3 days before the exam. Numerous students had already begun intense revision, and the library was packed every day. Bessy was in Dean Soup's office right now. "Dean Soup, what's the matter?" She stood at the table holding a stack of books. Wearing a snow-white sweater and a casual jacket, she didn't look as sharp as she usually did.
"Bessy."
Dean Soup glanced at her and put down his pen.
"I heard that you've decided to take 2 different midterm exams. Are you confident about nuclear engineering?"
The assistant beside him couldn't help but look up. Shouldn't he ask if she was confident about computer science? Everyone in the science and technology department knew that Bessy had a second major, whose classes she always attended. On the other hand, she never attended any computer science classes. Hence, there was absolutely no problem with her taking first place in nuclear engineering. Wasn't Dean Soup asking the wrong question? "I'm not sure," Bessy replied lazily, lowering her eyes. Although her words said she was uncertain, her tone sounded quite arrogant. Dean Soup chuckled.
"Okay, I understand. You can go eat."
"Goodbye, Dean Soup." She politely nodded to him before heading downstairs. She saw Kai and Kara the moment she reached the path outside. "Bessy, over here!" Kara waved to her. Bessy put her hat on her head, her aura as cold as ever. The 3 of them went to the cafeteria for lunch. Kara had been used to going to the 2nd floor, but since Bessy always went to the 3rd floor, they followed her upstairs. Kai ordered food, and then explained to them while sitting opposite them at the table.
"The class monitor went to help the counselor handle some stuff."
Kara sat down while texting. "Big Forest." "Bessy, it turns out that Mary, your high school classmate, is in the same school as us. But she's in the economics department." Kara put down her phone and regretfully said, "She's too far away, in the South Campus. I want to find a time to meet her. I want to see what a girl with her level in the game looks like." Recently, she had played several times with some people in the group, especially Mary. Bessy glanced at her silently. Kai, Gary, and Bessy weren't very familiar with one another, but unexpectedly had formed a strong friendship due to the game. When their dishes were ready, Kai went to bring them over. Kai put down the food and asked,
"By the way, the midterm exam is soon. Can you do it?"
Propping her legs up, Bessy picked up her fork. "Why are you all asking me that?"
"There's no choice."
Kai handed a pair of silverware to Kara.
"You have no idea how popular you are in school. The school forum is betting on when you'll enter the laboratory and guessing what your results will be. However,"
speaking of this, he frowned.
"I heard that President Flores wasn't satisfied with the difficulty of the freshman exam last year, so our exam this time is going to be very difficult. You haven't attended any lessons. What if you fail?"
"You're kidding. How could Bessy possibly fail?" Kara glared at him. She even got full marks for that insane mathematics paper in the final exams. Kai immediately unscrewed his drink and handed it to her, smiling.
"Kara, you're right.
Bessy was the top scorer of the final exams, after all.
The seniors said that last year's papers were difficult enough and a lot of people failed."
Ignoring him, Kara turned to look at Bessy, poking her fork into the bowl. "It'll be even more difficult this year. Our year really has it hard. We all thought our final exams last year were so hard, but now, the college exams are even more difficult." Even the computer science department's seniors were keeping their fingers crossed for them. Bessy slowly ate while listening to them silently. Only at the end did she suddenly look up. "What course did you guys study last semester?" Kai paused with a bottle in his hand and blankly glanced at her. The fork in Kara's hand also paused, and she looked up in a daze. After a long while, Kai stiffly said,
"We did all the basic courses, advanced mathematics, computer basics, college English, and science."
Northwestern University's progress was considerably fast. Bessy counted and realized they hadn't learned engineering drawing and digital electronics. After finishing her meal, she put down her fork and put away her tableware. Opposite her, Kara and Kai gripped their forks and stared motionless at her. Bessy stood up with her tableware and put her phone into her pocket. Seeing their still figures, she bent down slightly to knock on the table, her eyebrow raised. "I'm going to the library." They finally reacted and quickly nodded. Only when Bessy disappeared in the light and shadow beyond the doorway did they return to their senses. They exchanged glances.
"Kara, what did Bessy just ask us?"
Kai suddenly said. Kara knocked her head on the table. "She asked what course we were studying." Kai coughed. Finally returning to his senses, he put down his fork and glanced at her.
"I always thought she was studying computer science courses in the library."
Since Bessy had a high IQ, he always thought it wouldn't be a big problem for her to study 2 majors. After all, she was a standout even among geniuses. Speaking of this, I suddenly remembered that all the books on her desk were about nuclear engineering. She already studied next semester's topics and did a bunch of weird nuclear engineering exercises. Kara blankly replied. She had all kinds of abnormal nuclear engineering exercises, but none on computer science. Kai was speechless. What kind of operation was this? Why hadn't she taken a single look at computer science since the start of the semester? That Wednesday, Bessy's schedule was packed in the afternoon, but she didn't have any lessons in the evening. Before she arrived in class, Tucker called her. Tossing the backpack onto her back with one hand, she held her phone in the other and put on her headphones. On the other end of the line, Tucker squatted by the side of the road. Instead of eavesdropping, Zeke stood by the car, waiting for him. Tucker glanced behind him, then put his hand beside his mouth and whispered,
"Bessy, can we have dinner with Uncle Zeke tonight?"
"Dinner?" Bessy glanced into the library. Since she was still on the phone, she didn't go in and pulled on her sweater.
"I'm going to Hawaii with him tomorrow. I won't be back for a month."
Tucker's voice was low, and he glanced at Zeke, tilting his head. Hawaii was the filming location for the show. Leaning against the wall with clear eyes, Bessy decided not to reject the invitation. "Give me the address." Tucker gestured an OK sign to Zeke, and replied in an excited voice,
"Do you have class in the afternoon? Should we come pick you up?"
Episode 293. Playing with Bessy's high school classmates. "Up to you." Bessy played with the headphones cable in one hand and replied nonchalantly, "Call me when you get here." She said a few more words and then hung up. Then she clicked on Michael's profile and sent a message to him not to pick her up tonight. Right after that, a message from Noah popped up.
"Great composer, we chose 3 locations for the music video. Which do you think is better?"
He sent 3 photos consecutively, all of which were wide shots of locations. Bessy just casually glanced at them and saw that the second picture was in Hawaii, the same location as Tucker's reality show. Hawaii was a beautiful island and had many cultural monuments there. She casually glanced at it and randomly chose that location. On the other end of the messages, Noah stared at his phone. He got his answer after 3 seconds. Tilting his head, he glanced at Simon and put down the stick in his hand.
"The great composer chose Hawaii." "Hawaii?"
Simon nodded.
"Then I'll have the producers contact Hawaii. We might have to wait a few days."
He went out to contact them. The assistant next to Noah asked,
"Why did she choose Hawaii? It isn't part of our best plan, right? Noah, hadn't you already eliminated it because it's too far?"
Among the 3 locations, 2 of them already had strategies, and the producers were already in touch with people there. Only Hawaii hadn't been negotiated due to Noah's personal preferences, despite the producer's interest.
"What do you know?"
Simon took the phone and sneered.
"The big boss chose this location.
His great composer had chosen it, so how could Noah refuse? At 4:30 p.m., Zeke went to the elementary school to complete and leave procedures for Tucker. After taking a set of exercises and papers, he took Tucker to the car and they went to pick up Bessy. He was still using the studio's private car today. Both of them sat in the back seat while the manager drove. He drove to the sidewalk and headed directly towards the university town. He remembered Tucker saying that Bessy was studying there, but he didn't know which school she was in. Glancing at the rearview mirror, he asked,
"Tucker, which school is your sister in?"
Zeke also glanced over and tilted his head with a curious smile on his lips. He knew nothing about Bessy. Tucker always kept things a secret. As for James, He seemed very afraid of his daughter and only occasionally said a few things, like how she liked playing games like Tucker. Tucker sat upright and placed his hands on his knees, looking like a stern old man. Northwestern University, he slowly said. She was also at Northwestern University? The manager glanced at the rearview mirror curiously.
Is she also in the arts department?
He remembered that Anne was studying in the arts department at Northwestern University. Entering Northwestern University already proved her extraordinariness.
No, she's in the science and technology department.
Tucker didn't know whether his sister wanted to learn computer science or nuclear engineering. Having been with Zeke for a while, the manager naturally knew the affairs of the several universities and also knew Northwestern University's 4 major departments. Upon hearing Tucker reveal that she was in the science and technology department, his eyes widened in shock, completely surprised by this answer.
Your sister is in one of the 4 major departments?
Northwestern University's 4 major departments weren't comparable to other places, and students had to enter without bonus points or policies. Those who could enter the 4 major departments weren't ordinary people. Looking serious but indifferent, Tucker just raised his head and calmly replied,
Yeah? How come I've never heard her say so?
The manager thought of how she had only said Evanston back when he had asked her. She hadn't mentioned Northwestern University, much less the 4 major departments. Tucker looked away, seemingly puzzled.
Why does she have to tell you?
The manager was speechless. Feeling confused, he drove to Northwestern University's gate and waited for Bessy. They arrived at 5:30 p.m. when Bessy's class was about to end. Carrying his backpack, Tucker got out of the car with his phone. He deliberately suppressed excitement in his eyes. He stared at the gate intensely for a long while. Zeke put on a mask, then put on a huge and ugly long windbreaker that hid his figure. He put up the hood of the windbreaker too. Then he stood behind Tucker. The manager glanced at his windbreaker, baffled. The windbreaker was from a very ordinary street stall. It had the same width from the top to bottom and had no tailoring. It looked uglier than a sack. Even though Zeke was like a natural mannequin, with his face hidden, and from behind, he looked like a 5'11" bucket. Even his own mother wouldn't have recognized him, let alone his fans. Parking the car and walking over, the manager glanced at the glorious historic gate of Northwestern University and whispered,
Zeke, your niece is a student in one of the 4 major departments? I wonder if she'll have a chance of entering the research institute in the future. How long has the military family been isolated from there?
Everyone kept track of the Miller family's decline. After the patriarch's death, the direct line of descent was practically wiped out, hence the ensuing civil war. In the end, the Miller family lost control of the research institute and was replaced by the Flake family. In the years after the disappearance of the Miller family's direct line, no one from the extended relatives had been selected. Zeke glanced at the students walking around and pulled his hat down.
There haven't been any since the patriarch's death.
The manager tutted.
No doubt she's the Miller family's bloodline, but Jack doesn't know, right?
If he knew, how could he be so calm? Zeke remained silent. He wasn't in the direct line. He had been brought back from the tiger's den by the old man and had hence dodged a bullet. If it wasn't because he had been dormant in family affairs, instead working in the entertainment industry, the 4th son wouldn't have let him go. Without his father, he might not have survived in his teens. It wasn't until he had formed wide connections that he felt safe helping Jack find James. Standing in silence, they saw Bessy coming out of the gate with a book and a backpack. A black headphone cord hung around her neck. The manager stopped talking.
Bessy!
Tucker took 2 steps forward and excitedly called her, his dark eyes brightening. Walking through the crowd, Bessy approached them without rushing. Weaving among the crowd, she slightly squinted and looked obviously annoyed. Zeke pulled up his mask and lowered his voice.
Get in the car first.
Bessy walked forward, but when she was not far away, 3 boys trotted over.
Bessy, the professor said that you've almost finished this exercise. Can you lend it to us?
The boy who spoke wore an unzipped black jacket, looking tall and handsome. She opened her bag to pull out a book and handed it to him. I just finished writing it. The 3 boys were obviously familiar with her and spoke casually to her. After they left, Zeke asked as she walked into the car.
Your classmates?
No, Bessy held her book in one hand and lazily squinted after the boys. Seniors.
You've just started.
The manager took the key and glanced at her in surprise. Getting into the car, she took off her headphones and squinted. Yeah? Sitting in the driver's seat, the manager also wanted to ask why a senior was borrowing her exercise books. But seeing her cold and impatient face in the rearview mirror, he couldn't help but hold back. Zeke and Tucker had to set off the next afternoon. Since the kids were present, Zeke didn't drink and only ordered 2 juices for them. After eating, Bessy didn't text anyone to pick her up, and instead just asked the manager to bring her back to Northwestern University's entrance. This was a good sign. At least she wasn't being too standoffish with Zeke. Wearing a big windbreaker, Zeke walked her to the gate, but didn't dare go beyond that. He stood beside the car, waiting for her to be out of sight before he gathered his coat and got into the car.
Zeke, your niece is a little interesting.
The manager took out a cigarette from his pocket, staring at Bessy's back curiously. Inside the Clark family house, they were eating dinner. Michael hadn't planned on coming back for dinner at night, but since Bessy wasn't around, he drove back to the old house. Today wasn't a monthly family dinner, but Rosemary, Aaron, and a few other family members were sitting in the middle of the room discussing important matters. Joshua sat at the head of the table, wearing a designer suit as always, his eyes strict.
Evanston has experienced changes recently.
One of the men stood up and reported.
2 branch offices in Hawaii need to be transferred back. This year.
Hawaii was a mountainous area where several forces of the Clark family were housed. Other than Evanston, Hawaii had one of the highest populations among their bases. While holding a teacup, Joshua sternly glanced at Michael, who was slowly playing with his cigarette.
You can go this year. Dad?
Aaron immediately stood up upon hearing this with a drastically changed expression. He almost crushed the phone in his hand. He was mad because, sure enough, Joshua pampered the youngest son as always. Even if Michael knew nothing, the sweet gig in Hawaii was still being given to him. Everyone knew that going to Hawaii was beneficial. The other family members exchanged glances. Michael lifted his delicate chin and said lazily and calmly,
I refuse.
Sitting next to him, with her legs crossed, prim and proper, Rosemary glanced at him, but somehow maintained her ladylike demeanor and avoided rolling her eyes. Michael looked down at his watch. It was 8:30 now. Bessy was probably returning home. He patted his sleeves and stood up.
Dad, everyone, I'll head back now.
Aaron's heart relaxed and he sneered. As expected, Michael was still weak and inept. Glancing at his back, Rosemary stood up and nodded to Joshua and the others before hurriedly catching up with him.
Why don't you grab such a good opportunity? You're going to piss Dad off.
She fiercely folded her arms, her tone aggressive. Biting his cigarette with relaxed eyebrows, Michael replied,
What's so fun about Hawaii? I'm not going. See you.
He lazily waved to Rosemary, then opened the car door. He got in and the car drove away. Episode 294. The Chosen Location. Can Noah reject it? In the afternoon of the next day, Zeke and Tucker arrived at the airport in Hawaii. They went up to the mountainous town's scenic area in the film crew's car. He took Tucker to look around the town under the mountain instead of immediately starting work. After asking about Bessy's preferences, he bought many local specialties. Then he packed the things neatly into 3 parts. Glancing at the 3 gifts, the manager got an assistant to take care of them.
Are these for Jack, your niece, and James?
It wasn't the first time Zeke had done this kind of thing. Whenever he went somewhere, he would buy some local specialties and send them back. This time, dividing the gifts in 3 must mean they were for 3 people. Staring at the 3 gifts for a long while, Zeke's eyebrows drooped, and he replied after a pause.
No, they're all for Jack.
All for Jack? Taken aback, the manager didn't understand his intentions. But since he was ordered to send them to Jack, he didn't ask much and immediately turned around to arrange for someone to handle it. Zeke returned to his room after the manager left. Since they weren't familiar with this place, he was worried about Tucker and had arranged for them to stay in a room together. Tucker was playing games on the computer when he entered. Sitting next to him, he asked,
Tucker, I'll ask Jack to send some gifts to your sister. Do you think she'll want them?
After spending so much time with him, Zeke knew that whenever you said older sister to Tucker, it always meant Bessy. Hearing this, Tucker raised his head from the computer. Instead of immediately answering, he opened Twitter and clicked on the first blank profile picture that had been pinned to the top.
Bessy, Uncle Zeke wants to give you something.
After a long while, he received a reply.
Okay.
Just one answer. Staring at the word for a long while, Tucker still couldn't figure out the meaning. He looked through the address book for a long time and clicked on a completely black portrait. He quickly typed a string of words and sent it. In the Highline Apartments, Michael received the message from Tucker. He leaned on the sofa and glanced at the string of words expressionlessly. Bessy's intention was clearly stated inside. After a long while, he replied,
Remember to send it to the school.
He naturally could tell Bessy adored her younger brother. Michael replied faster than Bessy, within 2 minutes. Tucker glanced at his reply and casually sent a smiley face. Zeke never turned to look at Tucker when he was typing. He respected his privacy. Otherwise, he would definitely have recognized the profile picture. Satisfied with the answer, Tucker put away his phone.
My sister doesn't like noisy people.
Okay.
Zeke waited for a long time patiently and noted down Tucker's suggestions one by one.
I'll tell Jack to stop talking. Forget it, I'll write another note.
Oh, there's nothing else. Tucker shifted his gaze and continued playing games. Zeke nodded and asked,
Does your sister have any other preferences?
He had already bought Tucker all the novelties in Hawaii. He had rarely felt a sense of belonging after the old man's death, but he was very considerate towards the 2 siblings. One day later at 8 p.m., Jack received the things Zeke had sent to Evanston. Jack was now studying the project with the 3 programmers and Ricky. This was the first time they had come in contact with a project for the headquarters in recent years. So it was a tense moment. Hence, Jack and the others were very concerned. Keith came back inside.
Jack, Zeke has sent something to us from Hawaii.
Send it to the old house.
Jack didn't even look up. Before Keith left, he frowned.
The person who sent it said one of the packages has to be delivered personally to the recipient.
I'm very busy here.
Jack put down the documents and stood up, massaging his eyebrows wearily.
What important thing do you want me to send?
It's an address in Northwestern University.
Keith glanced down at the memo and replied. Staring up at the sky, Jack reluctantly said,
It's too late now. I'll send it tomorrow.
If it weren't Zeke who was asking, Jack would never have left his home to hand-deliver something in such an emergency. The next day, Bessy got up early in the morning. While carefully trimming the flowers on the balcony with scissors, Marvin immediately greeted her.
Miss Miller, do you have an exam today? The chef has made you a hearty breakfast.
He pointed his finger to the breakfast on the table. The chef had treated it very seriously. Northwestern University's exam papers were notoriously difficult. Of course, Bessy had gone to a good school, whose normal exams were very difficult. Michael didn't go for his morning run today. Wearing a snow-white shirt, he sat down with his cell phone and glanced at her.
The mountainous area in Hawaii is dangerous. How come they're shooting the show there?
Dangerous? Bessy looked up.
There was a period of torrential rain yesterday.
Michael replied while picking up a piece of bread. He had asked someone to check the address sent by Tucker. The place was half-developed, so he was worried about landslides. Bessy paused. Noticing her expression, he calmly said,
But it should be fine. Zeke is a big name, so the security measures of the program are ensured.
After a while, he smiled at her again.
Don't worry, I'll have people keep an eye on it.
She lowered her head and continued eating. She arrived for her first exam at 7:40 a.m. By the time she arrived, half of the class were already sitting inside, ranked according to their student number. Bessy and Kara were separated by 2 positions. People in the class all greeted her.
Bessy, are you really taking the exam?
The group of boys excitedly stared at her.
I thought you wouldn't come back after going to nuclear engineering.
Bessy had only brought a pen. She lazily laid it on the table. She only snorted when they talked to her. Usually talkative, Kara and Kai sat in silence, both of them feeling very worried. Gary glanced at Kai.
Why aren't you talking? Aren't you usually very diligent in wanting to talk to Bessy?
Kai opened his mouth and glanced at Bessy. After a long while, He lowered his head again silently.
If you knew that 2 days ago Bessy asked me what I learned in the first year of computer science, you would be like me.
He took out his manuscript paper deep in thought. The first test was college physics. In the first semester of college, physics was about mechanics and heat. Bessy had already learned these things a long time ago. Basically, those exposed to theoretical mechanics for the first time would find the contents of this course extremely useful. However, Northwestern University's physics test questions were not so simple, because they hadn't learned about heat yet. The whole paper was mechanics questions. Glancing at the multiple-choice questions in front of her, she felt surprised to see that the first few exercises almost all involved theories of foreign materials. The multiple-choice questions were full of tricks. Previously, Kara had already said that this year's midterm exam would be difficult, but Bessy hadn't had a proper estimation. At this moment, seeing how much effort these questions involved, she understood Kara's meaning. Without judging the overall difficulty of this test paper, she could tell from the rigorous and conscientiousness of the Science and Technology Department that they attached great importance to the midterm exam. Holding her pen, she filled in the answers seriously with her head lowered. Since it was a midterm exam, only one teacher from each department proctored the class. Those who could enter Northwestern University's Science and Technology Department were all arrogant, so plagiarism was rare. The teacher casually proctored the exam, holding a cup of tea and sitting casually. He was the Science and Technology Department's sophomore teacher, and he neither taught college physics nor read their papers. He stopped beside Bessy and glanced at her paper for a while when he was walking around. The exam lasted 2 hours. 50 minutes later, most of them were still far from finishing. Bessy finished writing, looked through it, then put away her pen. She passed her paper to the teacher. Then she directly left the classroom. Inside, everyone else involuntarily glanced at her, then looked down at their papers. Although the sophomore teacher didn't teach college physics, he had also heard of Bessy's reputation. Reaching out, he flipped through her paper and raised his eyebrows in surprise. She had filled in every question. But since he didn't know the specific answers, he could only wait for the professional teacher to mark it. On the other side of town, Jack set off from home and followed Keith's directions to bring Zeke's package to Northwestern University.
Jack, who is Zeke talking about? His friend? Why do you have to take it personally?
Keith asked. Zeke had specifically written on the note for Jack not to talk too much when he delivered the package. Massaging his eyebrows, Jack was still feeling anxious about the Miller family's project. When Keith spoke, he just absent-mindedly snorted without replying. If it had been in the past, he would have definitely curiously asked Zeke who the things were for, but now he wasn't in the mood to ask. He didn't care who it was. He just felt anxious and wanted to hurry back to the headquarters to manage the project. The two of them drove all the way to Northwestern University. At this time, Northwestern University was still having exams, so no students were on the road. Keith drove straight to the main road. Jack took out his phone and contacted the number on the note. After entering the number, he remembered Zeke's words and instead of calling, he just carefully sent a message.
Where are you?
There was no reply. Jack waited in the car for 10 minutes before an address was sent to him. Keith glanced at the address on his phone and drove over. The address was at the intersection in front of a building in the Science and Technology Department. Keith drove over and parked there, then walked to the trunk to take out Zeke's package. Seeing the Science and Technology Department's logo, he felt very surprised.
The person Zeke was talking about is from the Science and Technology Department? I wonder who it is.
Episode 295. Michael's Shocking Refusal. Jack's originally nonchalant face was also shocked when he got out of the car. Who was this person from one of the 4 major departments? They waited at the intersection, and within 2 minutes, they saw a tall, thin girl walking over from the intersection. Holding a black backpack, she wore a black sweater with the hood pulled up and almost covering her whole face. At a glance, she appeared rather cool. It was a girl? Both Jack and Keith were surprised. Walking up to them, Bessy pulled down her sweater hood and glanced indifferently at Jack. Did Zeke Miller ask you to find me? Jack blankly stared at her, speechless. Without a shadow on her face, it became clearer. Her beautiful almond eyes were filled with coldness and her long eyelashes drooped slightly, delicate and beautiful. Her eyes were 80% similar to James's and 90% similar to Tucker's. Most importantly, the vigor that had always been seen in the patriarch's eyes when he was alive was also in her eyes. Even if he had never met her before, nor confirmed with Zeke beforehand, Jack would still recognize her as James's daughter. He instantly forgot what to say and just stared at her speechlessly, unable to return to his senses. This was James's other daughter whose information he couldn't find? She was in Northwestern University as well? And was even a student of the Science and Technology Department? If he had felt a little impatient when he first received Zeke's news, all these thoughts flew out the window when he personally saw her. His eyes were even eager. Right now he regretted not rushing over and having delayed an entire night. He also realized why Zeke wanted him to personally come and deliver the stuff. He was speechless for a while. Slinging her black backpack on her back, Bessy raised an eyebrow, a little impatient. "I'm going if there's nothing." She walked 2 steps forward. Unlike Jack, Keith didn't think too much and reacted faster than him. He immediately removed the box and handed them to her. Zeke had only sent her some food and some handmade local clothes, so the box wasn't heavy. Holding it lightly in her hands, she thanked Keith, then directly walked to the library. At the intersection, Dr. Weatherby turned around and his eyes lit up when he saw Bessy.
Bessy, wait a minute.
He quickened his pace and walked over to talk to her.
How was the difficulty of the midterm test paper today?
He didn't know Jack, so he naturally didn't converse with him. He followed Bessy all the way to the library, enthusiastically offering to help her carry the things. Bessy refused extremely coldly. No need. At the thought of what had happened during the military training, Dr. Weatherby fell silent and didn't insist. He just discussed the test questions with her. It was fine. She had been asked this question countless times. Thinking for a while, she answered without hurry. They walked to the library, but Dr. Weatherby didn't enter. He just stared at her as she went in, then raised his hand to check the time on his phone. It was just past 10 o'clock a.m. 1 hour after the start of the exam? He reached out to send a message to the teacher.
Were the test questions difficult?
Jack and Keith were still rooted on the spot, staring in the direction Bessy had gone. Seeing how silent and motionless he was, Keith couldn't help but ask.
Jack, are you all right?
Jack returned to his senses, but instead of answering him, he took out his phone with trembling fingers and dialed Zeke's number.
"Zeke, I've delivered the stuff."
Jack finally spoke to Zeke after he picked up the phone.
"I saw her too."
On the other end of the phone, Zeke was filming the show. Humming faintly, he glanced at Tucker.
"The stuff reached Evanston last night, right?"
He knew that Jack hadn't delivered it right away, but he had expected this. Fortunately, he still personally delivered it as requested. After hanging up the phone, Zeke glanced at Tucker and said loudly,
"Tucker, be careful."
No matter how precious Tucker was, he was still just a child and would show curiosity to novel things. Only at this time did he show his childlike side. Jack hung up the phone and got into the car with Keith. Sitting in the driver's seat, Keith pulled out onto the road.
"Jack, that person just now."
After James's arrival in Evanston, Keith had followed him for a long time, so naturally he noticed how similar James and the girl just now looked.
"James's eldest daughter."
Jack stared out of the car in a daze. Although Keith had expected this, he was still shocked speechless upon hearing Jack confirm it.
"I've heard James mention this before. It seems like the eldest daughter's living conditions hadn't been as good as Anne's, but she actually went to the Science and Technology Department."
She wasn't an Evanston native, nor did she have any backing, but she still managed to enter the Science and Technology Department by herself. Keith glanced at the rearview mirror and suddenly spoke.
"If she can enter the laboratory next year."
After not completing his thought, he shut up again. The conditions were too harsh. Apart from the real geniuses, those who entered had been professionally cultivated by various families since they were young. Both of them were completely silent on the way back. Northwestern University only had 2 midterm exams that day. The exams were both important courses, physics in the morning, mathematics in the afternoon. Bessy stayed in the library before heading to the classroom for the afternoon exam. At 1:50 p.m., almost all the students in her class were already inside. Most of them were holding their notebooks, doing some practice questions on differential and derivative mathematics that the teacher had talked about before the exam. All of them were at their wits' ends. A group of people surrounded Bessy.
Bessy, you handed your paper in so early in the morning. Did you finish all the hard questions?
You actually finished such difficult questions?
I didn't even have time to finish reading some of the questions.
While they surrounded her, Kai and Gary entered the classroom and paused at this scene.
I didn't have time to do a question as well, but Bessy finished hers so quickly.
Kai glanced at Bessy expressionlessly and tiredly replied,
Perhaps.
The questions in the morning had been so terrible he now doubted his whole life. It wasn't just Kai. All the students of the computer science department couldn't lift their spirits for the afternoon mathematics exam. They already doubted life due to the physics paper and thought it was the worst moment in their lives. It wasn't until the afternoon, when the mathematics papers were issued, that the students realized they must have offended the teacher. The physics questions had at least been coherent, but the mathematics questions were completely crazy. They included the median theorem, a huge amount of calculation, and especially the last 4 questions, differential equation models. Was that even in the book? Wasn't this the mathematical modeling used by top students in the mathematics department to win awards? But it was tested in the computer science department? Were they crazy? A full document could be written just based on this topic. This last question on the differential equation had considerable difficulty in the mathematics department as well. It not only required the condition to be solved, but also its conjugacy discussed to prove 4 theorems. At the end of her writing, Bessy realized that Markov's basic prediction method also had to be used to determine the solution. She wrote briefly for the first few questions and used half of the paper's time for the last question. After finishing the paper ahead of time, she handed her answer sheet to the exam proctor and then left with her backpack. She was a celebrity in the computer science department, so her proctor naturally paid attention to her, especially as the teacher who was overseeing her mathematics paper. He held Bessy's answer paper a little stupefied. Among all the other papers, the proctor took out Bessy's and glanced at it. Then, she sealed the test papers properly and returned to the office.
Are you okay?
Another teacher in the room couldn't help asking when he noticed his strange expression. Returning to his senses, the proctor shook his head.
Today's questions were too difficult?
I'm not sure about that. The proctor put the test papers away and then turned to the other teacher.
Have you seen someone get tired writing the test paper halfway through and then use another hand to continue writing?
Having been a proctor for so many years, this was the first time he saw a student do this. He had been stupefied on the spot. The other teacher was speechless. To be honest, he had never seen it before either. He had only seen people switch to their left hands to carry things when their right hand was tired. With the physics and mathematics papers scheduled on the first day, the following basic computer science paper could no longer stir up the students. The computer science paper was held at 9:00 a.m. the next morning in the computer room. Bessy glanced at it from the beginning to the end. They were all the basic questions, but the last one was an operations question that was a little difficult. Since she didn't need to write the program by herself this time, she finished the process in about 10 minutes. Instead of moving forward to check the previous exercises, she just opened the editor, typed a bunch of codes, and then pressed enter. Then she gently pushed out her stool and got up to leave. The proctor walking back and forth in the computer room saw her leaving and hurried over.
Student, you're prohibited from handing in your paper within 30 minutes of the exam.
He stopped beside her and spoke in a low voice. The computer science paper was handed in systematically. The teaching system usually made it mandatory for 30 minutes to pass before handing in the papers, so the computer strictly controlled this aspect. While talking, the proctor looked in her computer's direction, but the circle on Bessy's computer was completed. Then, the words "successfully completed" and a green checkmark popped out. The proctor paused halfway in his speech. Slightly lowering her eyelashes, Bessy casually put on her black backpack and politely asked in a whisper, "Teacher, can I go now?" Episode 296, Bessy's First Exam. The proctor gaped and then returned to his senses.
Oh, you can go.
He was a teacher specializing in computer sciences. After Bessy left, he frowned and stared at her computer. After all the students had handed in their papers, he solemnly locked the computer room's door, then returned to his office and rigorously reported to the manager.
The computer room's exam system has loopholes.
Northwestern University's exam system in the computer room had loopholes? This was the biggest insult to the Northwestern University's computing department, especially when the exam was such a serious matter. After the lunch break for the test, a group of people in charge of the computer room closed the door, started the internal test, and checked for any bugs. Some students who needed to take computer tests, especially those in the sophomore year of economics, had come to the computer room to familiarize themselves with the sequence model in advance. Staring at the troublesome notice posted on the door, they exchanged confused glances. It was the first time Northwestern University conducted such a large-scale investigation of computer room failures after such a long time. The school forum went ablaze with conspiracy theories. For example, people had speculated that a student organization from the University of Chicago had attacked, or that a hacker wanted to challenge the authority of Northwestern University's security system. All sorts of rumors and speculations spread. Of course, Bessy didn't pay attention to these. She didn't know that the exam she had only wanted to take seriously had unexpectedly messed up the computer system for the whole afternoon. The computer science department considered how physically and mentally exhausted the new students were after finishing all the exams, so they very considerately gave them a half-day off. Kara didn't even eat lunch and just dragged her heavy body back to the bedroom. As soon as she opened the door, she saw Alyssa leaning on the chair, looking just as weak as her. They exchanged glances and could guess without saying anything just how their exams had gone. "I bought 2 packets of instant noodles." Alyssa reluctantly sat upright and threw a packet to her. "I didn't think you'd have the energy to eat dinner. I even boiled water for you." Kara took the instant noodles and sat thinking about life for 2 minutes before returning to her senses. She opened the packet of instant noodles and the seasoning package before pouring boiling water. Denora came in with a small mirror. After dinner, she was putting on lipstick while walking into the bathroom. After glancing at their state, she turned her attention to Alyssa. Were the questions in this year that difficult? Denora and Kara had basically stopped talking to each other. Alyssa nodded. "The hardest in history." Taken aback, Denora laughed, then sat down to continue putting on her lipstick. "Really? I remember that Bessy was supposed to take the exams as well." Many people knew that Bessy was taking 2 majors. Most of them knew that she majored in nuclear engineering, never took any computer science class, and basically self-studied in the library. Upon hearing Denora's question, Kara frowned without saying anything. Alyssa tore off the lid of the instant noodles, picked up her fork, and started to eat. While eating, she answered Denora without looking up. "She's the top scorer of the final exams after all. No matter how difficult the exam was, she'll still perform better than us, right?" She glanced at Kara, obviously asking her. At the thought of how Bessy had asked her last night about what they learned in the first year for computer science, Kara lowered her head and vaguely replied, "Yeah." Denora naturally noticed the obvious lack of confidence in her tone. Putting down her lipstick, she looked in her direction and smiled mysteriously. The degree of abnormality in the difficulty of the computer science department's exams had become a popular topic on the school forum. Denora had also heard of it. Bessy was doing 2 majors at once and hadn't even attended any computer science classes, yet she was going to take the exam? Her phone rang. It was a call from one of her senior friends. She quickly picked up. "Computer room? Okay, I'll go over right away." She had just returned to the bedroom, but had to rush out. The atmosphere in the bedroom improved the moment she went out. Alyssa had a question for Kara while they ate their noodles. "You sounded a little guilty when you replied just now." With the capability of entering Northwestern University, their IQ was naturally not low. Kara massaged her temple. "Bessy asked me a question before the exam." "What?" Alyssa calmly continued eating. She asked me about what topics the computer science class covered. Alyssa coughed twice and began to choke. She immediately put down her fork and pulled out a piece of tissue. At the Highline Apartments, Joshua was sitting on the sofa. He solemnly glanced at Michael, who was playing games opposite him.
Why won't you go to Hawaii?
It's not for me.
Michael leaned on the sofa with cold eyes and spoke with a cold and emotionless voice.
I haven't sent anyone to Hawaii yet. In the next 5 days, you can find me at any time if you have a change of heart.
Joshua glanced at him. Michael crossed his legs absent-mindedly.
Don't worry, I'll never find you.
A sound came from the hallway, and Bessy came in with her backpack, then squatted down to take off her shoes. Joshua's hard expression immediately faded. Michael also stood up, his eyebrows drooping.
Why are you back so early?
He knew she had classes after her exams. Bessy changed into a pair of slippers and greeted Joshua before replying. The department gave us an advance vacation.
I heard from Marvin that today's the midterm exam of Northwestern University. How did you do?
At the sight of Bessy, Joshua also smiled with ease.
Let the chef cook more delicious food for you later. Northwestern University's exams have always been difficult.
It was okay. Instead of going upstairs, she put down her backpack first. Only after the midterm exam did she start thinking about what Principal White told her previously. Joshua knew that Bessy was smart. She was the final exam's top scorer, and both Northwestern University and the University of Chicago had competed for her, so he wasn't at all worried about her exams. He only reached out and knocked on his knees, watching her ponder for a while before saying,
President Flores will definitely let you enter the Research Institute in 2 years. The institute involves all forces and families. Director Fielder himself dominates.
Bringing a cup of tea over, Simons also heard Joshua.
Why are you telling Miss Miller so much right now?
You're right. It's still too early.
Joshua nodded and stopped mentioning it to avoid pressuring her. While he talked to Simons, Michael just raised an eyebrow at him.
What?
Joshua's eyes sharpened. He hadn't been very indulging towards Michael as of late.
Nothing.
Michael slowly retracted his gaze.
I just wanted to ask if your heart is doing well.
He didn't tell him that Principal White had a surprise waiting for him. Joshua took the tea from Simons.
As long as you stop making me angry, my heart will do very well.
Upstairs, Bessy dumped her backpack on her bed and then went to the bathroom to take a bath. At the beginning of November, the weather had turned cold, and her room had been automatically kept at a constant temperature of 78 degrees, neither hot nor cold. Instead of blow-drying her hair, she took a towel to slowly dry it while turning on her computer and then typed a few keys. Then, she pulled out her chair and sat down. At the same time, in Hawaii, Tucker was doing his homework on a table in Zeke's room. Across the table from him, the manager discussed with Zeke about the filming tomorrow. The two were sitting on the same side of the small table, and the manager was holding a contract.
We'll head up the mountains tomorrow to several locations. I can only follow you from a distance with the director and the others. You and Tucker must pay attention to your safety.
As he talked, Tucker's computer suddenly lit up. The manager was shocked. Then, a cold and elegant face appeared in front of his eyes. Sitting with her legs crossed in the video, she was wearing a white long-sleeved t-shirt and squeezing her hair with a towel. The water from her fringe slid down her forehead to her chin.
Bessy Miller?
Stunned, the manager had yet to react. Tucker was writing on a piece of paper when he heard the manager say Bessy's name. He immediately put down his pen, walked over, and picked up the computer.
Bessy!
Having not expected to see Zeke and the manager, Bessy paused with the towel in her hand, then straightened her back. Mr. Miller, I've received the things. Thank you.
No need to be so polite with me.
Zeke's expression was gentle, and his voice was soft. Bessy, have you seen the picture I sent you? It's so fun here. Tucker's eyes were bright as he shared eagerly with Bessy. She had video called him because of Zeke's things, and also because she wanted to check up on Tucker. After ensuring that he was doing well, she hung up. Tucker turned the computer back off. Taking the contract, Zeke went to the director's room to discuss some details. Instead of going with him, the manager took the chance to ask Tucker,
Tucker, wasn't your computer already shut down?
why did the video pop up so suddenly? In fact, staring at the main computer page, he didn't notice any Twitter or video call function. The video just now seemed to have appeared out of thin air. Tucker was speechless. After a moment of silence, he explained,
I didn't actually turn off the computer. Really?
The manager was doubtful.
What else could it be?
Tucker retorted blankly. Unable to think of any other reason, the manager reluctantly believed his statement.
Where did you buy it? I also want to buy one.
After being together for so many days, the manager noticed how his computer turned on within 1 second, had fast reaction speed, and didn't have messy ads either.
My sister gave it to me.
Tucker lifted his chin. The manager nodded regretfully. Since he wasn't very close to Bessy, he felt too embarrassed to ask where she had bought it. At the Northwestern University Computer Science Department, all the teachers had collected the midterm exam papers. Midterm exams weren't as strict as final exams, so the teachers always brought them back home to mark. Episode 297. She wanted to take the exam, but accidentally messed up the computer. The mathematics teacher of the computer science department was a professor in the mathematics department and had been specially assigned to the computer science department this year. At this time, he was sitting in front of his desk, wearing glasses and starting to turn over the midterm exam papers. He only taught the freshmen of the mathematics and computer science departments this year, and had a total of 10 classes of students, as well as a pile of papers.
Professor, we finished marking the mathematics papers.
Opposite him, the 2 boys studying in graduate school handed the papers to him. They had taken 2 days to mark the applied mathematics papers. The professor then handed them the computer science papers. The 2 boys flipped through them. They specialized in mathematics, and they were taken aback when they saw the test paper contents.
This is the computer science test paper?
Did they make a mistake? It was even harder than the midterm exam for their mathematics major.
The computer science counselor requested it.
The professor held a thermos and continued.
How did they do?
Speechless, the 2 boys only shook their heads. Even the mathematics majors were in complete shambles for their papers. How could the computer science majors do better? They marked the computer science papers much faster. The last problem of the 4th order differential equation had only appeared in literature and only had one solution. Even the 2 boys felt their heads aching as they marked the answers. Within 20 minutes, they had finished marking about half of the pile of papers.
Did you give any paper 80 marks yet?
One of them asked. The other boy casually held his pen.
Not even 170 marks.
The full mark was 100 points. The boy put his pen aside and took another paper. Flipping to the back of the paper subconsciously, he was immediately taken aback. Although the last big question was on differentiation, it could be written as a special research project thesis using the theory of differential operators. This was precisely why the computer science department's freshmen had made such big reactions during the exam. Even the professor himself didn't have a standard answer to this kind of big question, because it required various theoretical verification processes. The boys thought that this question had only been placed as a form of decoration in the papers and didn't expect any of the freshmen to have finished answering it. The grad student had gone to graduate school to study with the professor and was also accomplished in the mathematics field. Hence, he could naturally tell that this student wasn't randomly scribbling.
Professor. What is it?
The professor pushed his glasses up his nose and looked over.
Look at this test paper.
Returning to his senses, the boy walked over and handed the test paper to him. The professor took it and looked through it. His expression changed from casual to solemn. Quickly sitting upright, he read the paper again, from beginning to end. This student had meticulous logical thinking and unique talent in mathematics far surpassing that of ordinary people. This person was obviously suitable for learning mathematics. How come this student accidentally went to the computer science department? He flipped to the name. Bessy Miller.
I already guessed it was her,
he said. Instead of putting down the paper, he stood up and went out with his phone. He was in a hurry to do something.
This year's new students are so fierce.
The boy sighed and stared at the professor as he left.
What's the professor doing? Do you still have to ask? The second boy looked away and confidently said, He's calling the dean. 2 days had passed since the exams. The midterm exam results were basically all out, except for the computer science papers. In the Science and Technology Department office, the counselor had just received the grades and was counting the last subject. The other faculties had already tabulated their results. Afraid that the computer science students were anxiously waiting for their results, he went online and sent a message to the group of students. Everyone, keep calm and don't get impatient. The mathematics result will be tabulated soon. You can check the scores at noon. Kai from Class 1 was the first to reply. Counselor, we're not anxious. We're really not anxious. You can tabulate it slowly. Students from the other classes chimed in. Yes, Counselor. We really don't want to know. It was Saturday, so except for a few people having elective classes, most of the students had no major classes. Northwestern University's atmosphere wasn't as lively as usual due to the release of the results in the morning. Their exam questions were notoriously difficult, and the school forum was mixed with joy and depression. The midterm exam discussion was expectedly on the hot search bar. A bunch of people wailed in the posts. Some complained about the perverse questions and suddenly thought of the Science and Technology Department's Computer Science Department. In the past 2 days, someone had uploaded the Science and Technology Department's papers to the school forum, and countless people had come to pay their respects to the computer science paper. There were many comments about the paper. Speaking of computer science, I wonder how Bessy did. She has spent all her time studying nuclear engineering. I think it's a little... What? Have you guys forgotten about the final exam? She obtained a perfect score, even in Devin Hoff's papers. It's been 2 months since the school started. Other than military training, I haven't seen Bessy participating in any activities. Neither did she enter the student union, nor receive any awards. Are we hyping her up too much? I'm a sophomore in the mathematics department. If I'm lucky, I think I could get a mark of 79 on the freshman paper. Too many rumors about Bessy were spreading, and most people had a wait-and-see attitude. All of Northwestern University was waiting for the computer science department's results. A little past noon, the computer science department's results were released. In the male dormitory, Kai clicked on the campus network, entered his student ID, and then entered his password. The system was a little slow, and it took 2 seconds for him to enter the campus network's homepage. Kai went straight to the results column and clicked on his own results. The results were ranked from top to bottom. Each exam was worth 100 points. Ignoring the other subjects, he just looked at the 3 major computer science courses. College Physics, 63 points. Computer Basics, 59 points. Advanced Mathematics, 41 points. Kai was speechless. Although he knew he had performed the worst in the computer science classes, his score of 41 points in the advanced mathematics paper still deeply pained him. Turning away from the computer, he went to find his other roommates for comfort. Upon hearing that they had scored 55 and 51 points on the mathematics exam, he suddenly felt a lot better. Only then did he dare to ask Gary. Gary, how many points did you score? While talking, he walked towards him and happened to glance at his results page. From top to bottom, College Physics, 87 points. Computer Basics, 89 points. Advanced Mathematics, 80 points. Kai and the other 2 roommates were speechless for a while. Realizing that they couldn't compare to him, they went to the group chat to find more comfort. The counselor in the group chat was also reassuring everyone. For advanced mathematics this time, only 10 out of 160 students in the 4 computer science classes passed. Upon hearing this, Kai finally heaved a sigh of relief. I knew that this test was abnormally hard. Glancing at the group chat, Gary suddenly thought of Bessy and asked Kai, Do you know Bessy's score? I saw her hand in the papers in advance. He had asked Kai since he was more friendly with Kara. But thinking about Bessy's previous actions, Kai was silent and didn't dare to ask Bessy. He just opened Kara's private chat and asked her instead. In the girls' dormitory, Kara was sitting in front of the computer. Bessy wasn't on campus today. Northwestern University's campus network could only be used on campus. Kara was talking to Bessy through the headphones. On the other end of the line, Bessy's headphones hung around her neck as she flipped through the nuclear engineering books. Luke had told her that the results of this exam were very important.
Usually unconcerned about her results, she put down her pen at this time and took out her computer. "Are the results out yet?" Kara paused and replied, "It just came out. The test is too difficult this time. Only 10 people in our entire major passed the advanced mathematics paper. It's only normal to not score well." Bessy didn't know that Kara was comforting herself. Now that the results were out, she turned on the computer and logged into the campus system to check her own results. Her results were as expected. She took a picture and sent it to Luke, asking him if it was okay. Kara quickly said again after a moment of silence, "Bessy, you're outside the school and can't log into the campus system. I'll check for you. Speaking of which, I only scored 58 points for advanced mathematics." "Okay." Lowering her eyes, Bessy politely sent her student ID and password to Kara. "Thank you." "No problem." Kara hung up. Behind her, Denora leaned back in her chair and opened the school forum. Several posts on the school forum were about Bessy. Her reputation of a popular nerd had spread widely, and even students from the University of Chicago were waiting to hear how she did on the exam. Denora threw the phone on the table. "How much do you think Bessy scored? So many people are curious about her grades. Since she's so smart, she must have done well in the exams." Standing up, she walked behind Kara and smirked. Kara frowned. She had already copied Bessy's student ID and password, but she had yet to log in. In fact, she had no intention of logging in due to Denora's words. "Why aren't you checking for her?" Denora walked to her side, bent over, and picked up Kara's mouse to click on the login. "Denora!" Kara didn't expect her to directly use her computer and quickly grabbed the mouse, but she had already clicked the results column. Holding the mouse, she casually clicked on the page. She had always disliked Bessy, who pretended to be nonchalant on the surface, but controversially took 2 majors to attract attention. Today, she would be mocked for it. Episode 298. This year's students are fierce. She naturally didn't think that her results would be good. If she had really done well, she would have posted the results on the school forum a long time ago. Why would she let people's imaginations run wild? She sneered and was thinking of this when the results column appeared. Like the others, her results were listed from top to bottom. College physics, 100 points. Computer basics, 100 points. Advanced mathematics, 100 points. Denora's mocking smile suddenly disappeared. The computer science department's papers this time were exceptionally difficult. Besides advanced mathematics, both college physics and computer basics were difficult. Even Gary hadn't done particularly well and only scored 80 points in advanced mathematics. His results were already posted on the school forum, and he was being worshipped by others. After the advanced mathematics paper was leaked, even the mathematics department was saying that he was a god for scoring 80 points. But Bessy scored 100 points? Denora was in disbelief. She grabbed the mouse and refreshed the page again. The refreshed results were still a row of 100 points. Taking a step back, she still felt incredulous. How could it be? If she had done so well in the exams, why hadn't she come out and said something already? Why was Kara hiding it? Of course, even Kara was stunned after seeing Bessy's results. Alyssa came in with her clothes and was taken aback to see their expressions. "What's the matter?" Silently, Kara just pointed at the computer. Alyssa pushed her glasses up the bridge of her nose, walked to the computer to take a look, and suddenly fell silent. "Sure enough, she's the final exam's top scorer," was all Alyssa could say. After a long while, Kara sat down, pretending to be calm. She sent a screenshot to Kai. You can't judge her by a normal person's standards. Denora couldn't bring herself to listen to Kara. Lowering her head, she left the dormitory with a dark expression. Watching her leave, Kara laid her head on the table, staring speechlessly at the god-level results on the computer screen. After a while, she clicked on Big Forest's profile, and then described this matter to her. She started taking double majors at the beginning of school and never even went to computer science classes before. Has she always been like this? She even asked me what topics we've learned in class just before the exam. But she still scored 100 points? Big Forest quickly responded. Calm down. She took a leave of absence for 8 months before our final exams, during which she took time to travel abroad. When she came back for the exam on June 1st, she had broken her left hand in May. Dragging her semi-disabled body along, she was still awarded the top scorer in the final exams with a score of 747. How infuriating, right? Kara was speechless. After Bessy's score was sent to Kai by Kara, it quickly spread among the computer science group chat. And then, it was posted in Northwestern University's school forum. The first picture shows her full marks in all 3 subjects. The second picture shows her last answer for the advanced mathematics paper. And the third, can you tell? According to the seniors, the mathematics professor went to the physics department to discuss it overnight and said that they were denied her talents. I also want to stand out. Smiley face. Doesn't anyone care about her results in nuclear engineering? Nuclear engineering doesn't have a say? The nuclear engineering scores couldn't be found on the campus network, but the major teachers already estimated it. Again, standing out from the crowd, Bessy scored full marks in each course. After a 2-month period of silence in school, Bessy had swept all the classes of Northwestern University. In the Park Place apartments, James was bitterly looking at a pile of documents while Keith sat staring at him from the opposite couch. The phone rang beside him. James was shocked and immediately picked up. It was Zeke.
Zeke, is it Tucker?
After hearing something on the other end, he abruptly stood up.
What, is Tucker okay?
Sitting opposite him, Keith saw that his expression was wrong and stood up as well.
James, what happened? Tucker slipped into a cave.
James hung up and quickly dialed Bessy's phone. At this time, he was also a little flustered and didn't know who to call, so he instinctively called Bessy. At this moment, she was sitting inside the car. Michael had sent people to look after Tucker in Hawaii, so she had already received notice of the incident 5 minutes ago. Marvin had already bought tickets at the Evanston airport, and the two were on their way there now. While driving, he glanced at the rearview mirror and comforted her.
Miss Miller, don't worry. Michael said your brother is in no danger.
I know. Bessy sat in the back seat, staring out the window. Her eyes were dark and her tone was emotionless. Although her tone was light, Marvin faintly felt her anger. He immediately shut up, not daring to say another word to her. Inside the Clark family house, Michael stood in front of Joshua, straightened his sleeves and said nonchalantly,
I'm going to Hawaii.
Joshua sat upright. His eyebrows bent as he tapped his fingers on the table.
Are you sure?
He asked in a heavy voice. With his usual cold appearance, Michael wore a white shirt and carried his jacket casually in his hands.
Just tell me if you'll give it to me.
Joshua's lips twitched. He wanted to ask, who was the one who vowed 2 days ago that Hawaii was no fun and that he would never go there? 10 minutes later, Michael left the house refreshed. Joshua put down his teacup. Outside, Simons came in with his phone and helplessly shook his head.
I just asked Marvin. He said they just boarded the plane to Hawaii. It seems like they're going to see Miss Miller's brother.
Joshua was speechless. In the corridor, Aaron held a tree branch while playing with Joshua's bird. He sneered and put down the twig upon hearing the news from his subordinate.
I thought he had improved, but in the end, it was all for a woman.
7 hours later, on the reality show set in the mountainous area of Hawaii, the search and rescue personnel had just pulled Tucker out of the cave. Except for his dirty body, he was still in good condition, but his leg seemed a little injured. His face cold, Zeke picked him up silently, then walked down the mountain step by step back to his room. The director of the reality show wiped the sweat on his forehead, and the group followed Zeke, not daring to utter a word. Forget the Miller family's reputation in Evanston. Just the 2 words, Zeke Miller, were enough to make them choke on their saliva. The crew was panicking internally. After arriving at the hotel at the foot of the mountain, the director clutched his phone, so anxious that he was parched.
Where's the doctor? Why hasn't the doctor come yet?
Coming downstairs with a serious expression, the manager didn't blame the director.
The set doctor has already gone up to their room. It's 11 o'clock now, so the health centers are closed, and the mountain roads aren't easy to drive either. Tomorrow I'll go to the city to find a doctor. Tucker doesn't have any major injuries.
The director finally relaxed upon hearing this. Upstairs, the set doctor helped Tucker deal with his leg.
You just sprained your left foot. Zeke, if you're still worried, you can drive to the city tomorrow.
Zeke finally heaved a sigh of relief. Sitting next to Tucker's bed, he glanced sternly at him for the first time.
I already told you not to run around. The crew had already moved the protective barriers there. Why did you go back?
Tucker lowered his head and said sheepishly,
The stone that Daniel gave me fell inside.
The manager came in and stood at the side, holding a carton of milk for Tucker. He put in a straw and handed it to him. He lectured Tucker seriously.
How can a stone be more important than your life? This time it's only a false alarm. Fortunately, the search and rescue team appeared in time, so you didn't suffer any major injuries. Don't do this again.
Tucker took a sip of milk. Uncle, now that I hurt my foot, I might not be able to help you record the show. Still feeling worried, Zeke laughed angrily upon hearing this.
You're still thinking of the show while in such a state?
He didn't feel safe about leaving Tucker here alone. Taking the phone to relay his safety to James, Zeke sent for someone to pick Tucker up as well.
Uncle.
Sitting on the bed, Tucker suddenly raised his hand and weakly said,
My sister is downstairs.
Zeke was about to call James when he heard Tucker and suddenly froze. He turned around and asked,
What did you say?
My sister is downstairs. Tucker looked up. Putting down his phone, Zeke stared at him blankly while sitting on the stool beside his bed. The manager reacted.
Zeke, I'll go get. Is your sister fierce?
Zeke thought of her cold and impatient face and fell silent once again. Tucker thought for a while and shook his head.
She's not fierce.
Then he said without confidence,
She's more terrifying than being fierce.
Zeke was speechless. Staring at his expression, Tucker suddenly understood and bowed his head guiltily.
Uncle, I'm sorry. I'll go bring her up.
Zeke raised his hand to look at the time on the watch. It was almost 11 p.m.
Why didn't you tell me earlier? Did she come alone this late?
He frowned. The variety show at this time was completely secretive, but the whereabouts of the crew were always exposed. Several tourists were always hanging around not far from the set. Putting on a mask, Zeke went out with the manager hurriedly following behind. The director was still downstairs drinking with a middle-aged man at the old hotel bar. Upon seeing the manager hurry down with Zeke, he quickly stood up and said,
Mr. Miller, is Tucker in a bad condition?
No. Zeke pulled on his mask and hurriedly left without telling the director anything more. One step behind him, the manager explained,
Zeke's relative is here. It's all right. Director, is there an empty room in the hotel? It's best if the room is close to Zeke's.
The manager averted his eyes and whispered. Episode 299. Bessy once again swept Northwestern University's exams.
Yes, the room opposite Mr. Miller is empty. I'll have someone clean it immediately. I'll get you the keys later.
Most of the other artists were rookies, so the director had arranged rooms for them on a different floor to prevent Zeke from dealing with them. While he went downstairs to call the staff, he wondered what kind of relative would make Zeke hurry down anxiously to receive him. He glanced upstairs. Just then, Zeke came back in with a tall and thin figure. The person was wearing a black sweater with a hat low on her head. She casually wore a coat of the same color and a black mask. Upstairs, Zeke brought Bessy to his room, then raised the temperature of the room before handing her a cup of hot water.
Why did you come here alone?
He asked in a calm tone. Pulling off her hat and mask, she threw them onto the table and took the cup of hot water. I happen to know a friend here. It was on the way. Zeke's expression eased upon hearing this. Someone knocked on the door and brought the keys to the room opposite. Zeke went to open the door. Bessy turned directly to Tucker with cold and dark eyes. She glanced around the room and saw a wooden chair not far away. Raising her foot, she kicked the chair to Tucker, who sat down right away. She folded her arms and said, "Explain."
I was just picking up Daniel's stone.
Tucker didn't dare to look up at her and deeply bowed his head.
That broken stone? He can give you 100 other stones next time.
Bessy sneered. Zeke and the others just considered themselves lucky, for the search and rescue team had managed to arrive quickly and rescue Tucker before the collapse. However, they weren't aware that the search and rescue team had been arranged by Michael. Otherwise, it would have taken a day to enter the mountain after receiving the report of Tucker's accident. The cave would have collapsed long before he was rescued. Only Bessy was aware of this. Tucker's head hung lower. Zeke came in with the keys and took the initiative to admit his mistake.
I'm sorry, I didn't take care of him.
It was mainly because Tucker had been very obedient. The artists in the variety show this time were all adults and Tucker was the only child. Since the crew had already pulled the cordon, Zeke hadn't expected him to cross the line.
Tucker, quickly, tell your sister about your injury,
the manager said. He had followed Zeke in.
Don't do such dangerous things over a rock next time.
Tucker cautiously looked up at Bessy.
Bessy, I sprained my ankle. What about the show?
You have to finish it, even if you sprained your ankle. Standing up, she stared lightly at him. You brought it onto yourself. Tucker's mouth hung open. Standing at the side, the manager thought, Tucker's sister is ruthless as expected.
Go take a bath and then rest first. Here are the keys. The room has clothes. The simple rooms near the mountainous areas are humid, so remember to turn on the air conditioner to a higher temperature when you sleep at night.
Zeke handed the keys to her. She originally wanted to say that she already had a place to stay, but after hearing this, she thought about it and still took the key. Thank you. She returned to her room. Zeke was still discussing the matter of the show with his manager. The variety show included not only him, but also several other artists. Everyone's schedule had already been planned, and they had been delayed by one afternoon and night, so Zeke couldn't delay any longer tomorrow.
How about the amateur I chose last time?
The manager flipped through the itinerary.
She's been on 2 recent programs and won't act up. She'll appear as your cousin and can arrive the day after tomorrow.
Pouring some medicine and handing it to Tucker, Zeke's interest was lacking, since he wouldn't be participating in the following recording. He had no specific opinion about which amateur was chosen.
Anything is fine.
The manager also felt something was strange and wanted to ask about it.
How did your niece rush over from Evanston in just a few hours?
Excluding the time required for security check, the plane took 9 hours to fly straight to Hawaii, but usually had to take a roundabout path through several mountainous areas halfway through the trip. It would probably take a full day's flight. How had they gotten here so fast? Tucker put down the medicine and played online games with Bessy on his phone. He controlled the characters to follow Bessy while he sent her messages. Bessy, Bessy, Bessy. Her reply was cold and cool. I'll block you. Unafraid, Tucker continued typing. Do you want to act in the show with Uncle? It's really fun. Bessy didn't reply for a while, and then she sent 2 words. Shut up. After a long while, the manager finalized the schedule after discussing it with Zeke.
Then that's it. I'll go to the director.
He turned around, about to head out. Lying on the small bed, Tucker suddenly sat up, blinking.
Uncle, my sister said yes.
Both of them were stunned.
What?
My sister wants to help me pay off the debt, Tucker seriously said. Can she? He stared at Zeke. Zeke was completely dumbfounded. After a pause, his eyes lit up.
Yes, of course.
Turning, he glanced at the manager.
Go and draft a contract with the director.
While talking, he took out his phone, opened the browser, and slowly typed in a search.
How to communicate and get along with my little niece?
The 2 left the room and closed the door, and the manager glanced at him to see him slowly searching for entries online. His lips twitched.
Zeke, are you for real?
Yeah, he absent-mindedly replied. The manager pondered hard about it.
Your niece isn't suitable for this reality show,
he said.
She's from Northwestern University. Didn't you want her to become an entertainer last time?
Zeke asked, looking up. They started walking downstairs. The manager said,
That's different. If she was my artist, I would definitely package her from the beginning. I'd have her slowly appear in front of the public, step by step. Her face would definitely become more popular than yours, but if she suddenly appears on the variety show with you, the most important thing.
He glanced at him.
Unlike Tucker, who still relies a little on you, just look at how awkward you are with her. When the show is broadcast, the awkwardness would overflow the screen.
He cringed and couldn't bear to look straight at the thought of this. Zeke smirked and calmly said,
Go and draft the contract.
The manager already guessed this result. They went to the director's room together. The director had just finished taking a bath. He had expected Zeke to request to change the guest star, but didn't expect him to confirm the guest so quickly. There was nothing to change in the contract, so they just looked it over and signed it. Worried about leaving Tucker alone in the room, Zeke went back. The manager remained in the director's room. Noticing his hesitance, the director took out 2 cans of beer and placed them on the table, then glanced at him hesitantly.
Is there a problem with the amateur that Mr. Miller invited this time? She's not an amateur, but his niece. She's not a problem. She's good-looking and photogenic, but I'll have to trouble you to edit better and not give her too many solo shots. She has a dull personality, a bad temper, and isn't very personable, so it might not look nice on the broadcast. You don't have to give her many shots. The main thing is not to use shots of her maliciously, just for the show's effect.
The manager opened a can of beer and took a sip. As part of the entertainment circle, the director understood the problem from the manager's words.
Mr. Miller is so brave. The entertainment industry is a magnifying glass and will enlarge the shortcomings of most people. Fortunately, our show isn't broadcast live, so we can just edit the footage after the fact.
After a moment of silence, he turned to the manager.
Why don't you invite an amateur to come over? Why didn't you persuade him to do that?
Hearing the manager's descriptions, he wasn't looking forward to tomorrow's filming, but since the other party was Zeke, the director couldn't really help it. Who actually cared about the show or their gimmicks? Most people had flocked to the show to watch Zeke's appearance in a reality show for the first time.
Actually, I didn't agree with Tucker coming to shoot either. This isn't good for a child's growth. Netizens nowadays are so demanding, and they'll catch any bad performance in front of the camera.
Taking another sip of beer, he sighed.
Thankfully, his niece is only shooting for a few days. We'll change to Tucker once his sprained ankle is healed.
As these businessmen talked and drank, Zeke was thinking,
my niece is so cold and indifferent. How can I let this opportunity to get close to her slip out of my hands?
He wouldn't back down and replace her. His eyes were now blinded, and he felt like everyone in this world would adore his nephew and niece. Most importantly, he really wanted to have fun with them during the show. Tapping his fingers on the table, the director narrowed his eyes and finally accepted it.
Okay, it's final then. We'll re-sign the contract a few days from now.
They could just muddle through the first few days and see how it went. If the shooting situation was really bad, then they could still invite an amateur, and Zeke definitely wouldn't refuse at that time. Even if Zeke didn't care about his own reputation, he still had to consider his niece. After discussing with the director, the manager left with the contract. He massaged his temples, then returned anxiously to his room. The combination of Zeke and Bessy was too strange. He really wasn't very optimistic. After the manager left, the director drank the remaining beer and went to discuss it with the crew. Because of Tucker's incident, the assistant director had only just fallen asleep and was awakened by the director. Upon hearing this, he suddenly sat upright.
His niece? In college. This isn't a young child like Tucker. The netizens are already malicious enough to a child, let alone a grown person. What does Zeke Miller want?
Episode 300. Act in the show with us. The assistant director frowned. For the chief director to be cautious, it seemed like Zeke's niece was going to cause a lot of trouble for the show crew. He originally thought that Zeke joining this time would add a lot of popularity to the program, but now it seemed troublesome.
His manager just came to talk to me about this. The director groaned. I'll be on location with the film crew tomorrow. You should pay attention to the footage in the studio. If they film anything bad, tell the crew to cut it. Also, Mr. Miller attaches great importance to his niece, so don't try to use her to create contradictions.
Zeke wasn't one to provoke. The assistant director nodded, his head aching.
I understand.
This was really troublesome. In another house in the mountain town, Marvin had just come out of the shower. He now had very sensitive senses. As soon as he opened the bathroom door, he heard the roar of a helicopter above. Instead of drying his hair, he walked directly downstairs to the yard in his coat. A helicopter was parked there. The door opened, and a black shadow jumped down lightly. He straightened his clothes and glanced at Marvin with narrowed eyes.
Why are you here?
His tone was neither cold nor light. Marvin, who recognized the disdain, was speechless. The person who got off the helicopter was Michael. Without even glancing at him, he just directly walked inside. Only one room had lights turned on. He squinted slightly.
Is Miss Miller sleeping?
He asked Marvin. Marvin was still staring at the helicopter parked in the yard. He had already seen Michael's private jet countless times, but he still hadn't figured it out. Was there no flight ban on private jets traveling between Chicago and Hawaii? He and Bessy had also had the helicopter pick them up after getting off the plane. Otherwise, they couldn't possibly have reached such a difficult mountain road in such a short time.
Oh, no.
Marvin didn't have time to think about this problem. He followed Michael and respectfully replied,
Miss Miller sent a message over an hour ago. She's staying with her uncle there, and it seems like she's helping her brother record several episodes.
Michael was originally walking in front of Marvin unhurriedly, but at this, he suddenly stopped in his tracks. Following closely behind him, Marvin braked. Realizing that something was wrong, he stopped talking and didn't dare say anything else.
Go on.
Michael glanced at him and casually took a cigarette from his pocket. The thin smoke rose into the sky as he lit it. His voice was light as he spoke. Marvin was stunned.
About what?
Michael squinted his eyes lazily.
Where's her uncle?
Nodding in understanding, Marvin took out his phone hurriedly, opened it to show Bessy's Twitter, and handed it to Michael for him to check the phone's GPS. Michael took the phone directly and walked back outside without glancing at him.
Michael!
Frozen in place, Marvin's remaining words were blown away in the wind, so Michael didn't hear him say,
You haven't returned my phone.
In the hotel at the foot of the mountain, Zeke took a shower and slept for a while. Then he took the contract to Bessy. Inside, Bessy was wearing a nightgown, her hair hanging loosely, not dried yet. She turned sideways and simply said, Come in. It was very late, so Zeke didn't go in. He stood at the door and calmly said,
Tucker said you wanted to do the reality show together.
Just a few days. I'll have to trouble you to continue taking care of him after. She didn't mind that he didn't enter the room. She just glanced out at the hallway and continued casually drying her hair.
How is it troublesome to take care of him?
Zeke handed her a document, seemingly relieved, and his tone sounded much more relaxed.
This is the specific arrangement for tomorrow's show. There's no script or any settings, so you can just act like yourself. A few other artists will also be there at the time. I'll introduce them to you tomorrow.
Holding a towel to her head with one hand, she took the file with the other and politely said, Okay. Zeke slightly nodded.
Feel free to call me if you have any questions. You might not be used to recording the program for the first time. It's midnight. You should get some rest. You have to get up early tomorrow.
He stood at the door and nagged her about sleeping for a while before leaving. Bessy watched him leave, then closed the door and returned to her room. She threw the papers onto the table, and instead of going back to the bathroom to dry her hair, she walked to the window and drew the curtains. There was someone sitting on the narrow windowsill. His hands were placed on the sill. His legs were swaying slowly, and a cigarette was dangling in his mouth, a spark of fire in the dark night. Bessy continued drawing the curtains and threw the towel to him. Michael, you're so impressive. I can't believe you climbed up here. Zeke's room was on the 3rd floor and didn't have any security windows.
You flatter me.
Michael jumped down directly, unashamed and in fact, proud.
The security guard said that the hotel was fully booked. I didn't reason with him on account of your uncle.
After jumping down, he looked for the ashtray and snuffed out the cigarette. The towel in his hand was semi-wet and the room temperature wasn't very high. Walking around, he found the remote control for the air conditioner and raised the temperature by 2 degrees before throwing it aside. The rooms in this hotel at the foot of the mountain weren't big. They were only a couple hundred square feet, just enough to fit a bed and a table. A few more people would crowd the room. There was a heater in the corner. The wardrobe was made of wood and had been painted white, but the paint on the handles was all gone. Everything was very old. The bedsheets and quilt had probably been changed by the crew themselves.
The room's too small, and it smells musty.
Michael continued commenting on the room, criticizing things from beginning to end, before feeling a little better.
What did you eat for dinner?
Bessy sat down, looked through Zeke's documents for tomorrow, and replied without looking up. an extra lunchbox from the crew. She turned a page. Suddenly, her sight darkened. Walking around and taking a clean towel from the bathroom, Michael moved a chair with his foot and sat down next to her. He covered her head with the towel and then clumsily dried off the remaining moisture on her hair. After he finished, he frowned.
The production is so poor.
Bessy's eyebrows jumped. What do you want to do?
Me?
Lowering his head, he rested his chin on her shoulder, leaning his head on the side of her neck, and said in a lowered voice,
Go to a hotel in the city. The private jet can reach the top of the mountain in less than an hour.
Bessy was speechless. The crew had so many people, and the jet would have a long line every morning. Wouldn't the director be scared to death? She grabbed the towel from her head blankly and pressed it to his face. The next morning, Bessy got up at 6 o'clock and soon after received a text message from Marvin. He was downstairs and had even brought breakfast. Instead of wearing a coat, she only wore a white sweater, put on her hat and went straight downstairs to get the food from him. Without wearing a mask, she pulled down her hat to cover most of her face. At this time, many fans were waiting outside, but at the sight of an unfamiliar figure, they squatted back down in disinterest. The lunchbox Marvin handed her was the kind commonly used in the school doctor's office and could hold 3 layers. 3 portions of breakfast were inside. She knocked on Zeke's door first, handed him 2 sets, and then returned to her own room. Zeke took the food inside. He originally thought it was breakfast bought on the street in the small town, but discovered that the food inside was all exquisitely made. It looked like a 5-star chef's dish and contained some very fresh, seasonal fruit. Staring at this and frowning, he awakened Tucker. At 6:30, the production was ready to start recording. There were 3 guest stars in total, including Zeke, a popular movie star, and the newcomer, Jasmine Carpenter. The show started with only the 3 of them and would add a variety of popular guests later on. Zeke's fame accounted for half of the interest in the program. Behind the scenes were several assistant cameramen and production assistants. The day's itinerary was written on the schedule, and the program team wanted to film the stars and their relatives when they just woke up. Before the recording, the director found the cameraman for Zeke's group and pulled them aside.
Just take pictures of Zeke later, not of his relative.
The head cameraman was stunned.
No need to take hers? Yeah, in the following scenes, take fewer shots of his partner and just take more solo shots of him.
In order to avoid offending Zeke, the director had decided to reduce shots of his relative.
His partner is his niece and isn't an insider, so she doesn't understand a lot of things. When she makes mistakes during the shooting scene, try not to shoot them.
He still hadn't seen what Zeke's niece looked like. Although Zeke's manager said she was good-looking and also photogenic, he wasn't really in the mood to go and see for himself. The entertainment industry had many good-looking people. He thought about the following days and felt extremely worried. Upon hearing this, the cameraman nodded and thought for a while.
I understand, but I'm not the only one following them. Others will be taking footage too.
The director couldn't inform every single one of them, and if anyone leaked the footage, people on the internet would definitely talk about it.
Just see how it goes.
He pressed his aching head and waved for the cameraman to hurry into Zeke's room. At the same time, in the movie star Katie's room on the 2nd floor, her manager also received news that Zeke had changed to a new guest.
Miss Freeman, she's Zeke's niece and he really adores her.
The manager was giving her some information to prepare her in advance.
Like Tucker, she's not an insider and might not be very photogenic. Help take care of her just like you did with Tucker.